Chapter 1783. Holy Lord, could this be a plot against you? The Hall Master of the Holy Hall, Xian Junhua, was a smart person. If Moron could think of this, it was impossible for him not to. Moreover, this matter was very strange. Originally, they did not know about the existence of the fragment. However, one day, an expert from the Holy Hall's intelligence network suddenly appeared. That expert did not intend to go to the place where the fragment was found. He was chasing after someone. At the place where the fragment was found, the expert from the Holy Hall found the fragment that contained a terrifying power. Could things really be so coincidental? Or was the expert from the Holy Hall lured there by someone else? Xian Junhua guessed that the other party might have lured him there on purpose. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Originally, Xian Junhua did not intend to tell Moron about this. However, after thinking about it for a long time, he realized that if the other party really wanted to lure Moron there, it would not be just this time. If the other party found out that Moron did not go to the soul-sealing water domain, they would probably use other methods to attract Moron's attention. Rather than that, he might as well tell Moron openly. He would also tell Moron about his guess. Hence, Xian Junhua came to report. Moron nodded. He was almost certain that this was a plot against him. A fragment of a powerful weapon had appeared in the soul-sealing water domain. Moreover, it was extremely heavy and ordinary people would not be able to lift it. Wasn't this hitting Moron's weakness? Moron needed an item that contained a huge amount of power, and no one else would be able to touch the fragment. Moron would definitely go there. As for those who were targeting Moron, they had already set up an inescapable trap and were waiting for Moron to fall into it. Holy Lord, although the expert on the holy rankings was unable to lift the fragment of the weapon, he was still able to do so. However, don't we have 3 supreme martial artists in Shenzhen? With their help, they will definitely be able to get it back. Xian Junhua suggested. Moron shook his head as a smile appeared on his face. Xian Junhua, do you think that Sun Feiyong and the others will be able to bring back the weapon fragment if this was a plot against me? Xian Junhua immediately shook his head. He was sure of this. However, the Forbidden Soul Water region was simply too dangerous. Without being able to use his soul force, Moron would simply be sending himself to his death if he went there. How could I disappoint them? I'm definitely going to the Forbidden Soul Water region. After thinking for a while, Moron's eyes flashed with a resolute, cold light. He had already made up his mind. Xian Junhua felt helpless. However, he understood Moron's character, so he didn't try to persuade him anymore. He only said, Holy Lord, this time, I suggest that we bring the 3 Supremes of Shenzhen with us. Yes, it would be best if he could bring 100,000 experts on the Saint rankings with him. Even a Supreme Being wouldn't be able to withstand the combined attacks of 100,000 experts on the Saint ranking. Moron nodded. The next day, Moron brought a portion of Shenzhen's experts and left Shenzhen. They flew towards the Forbidden Soul Water region. With Moron's current speed, it wouldn't take long for him to cross the Holy World. Therefore, he quickly arrived near the Forbidden Soul Water region. This was a vast and boundless region of water. Looking from afar, it seemed as if the sky and the earth had merged into one. The sea and the sky were the same color. From time to time, Moron would see some experts from the human clan, the holy clan, and the demon clan flashing past him and charging into the Forbidden Soul Water region. To them, although the Forbidden Soul Water region was dangerous, it was the same as an ordinary mountain range. Although soul force was prohibited here, they didn't need to use soul force in the first place. With a step, Moron was already above the surface of the Forbidden Soul Water region. Whoosh! The soul force that was originally filled with explosive power disappeared without a trace in an instant. Even the soul force in Moron's spiritual space that was tumbling like raging waves calmed down in an instant. As for Moron, he didn't even notice how his soul power had disappeared without a trace. After studying for a while, Moron didn't discover anything. He continued to fly towards the King weapon fragment. This Forbidden Soul Water region is really the best place to kill me. Without soul force, I'm just a rank 5 chaotic ancestor sage. On the way, Muronyu revealed a self-deprecating smile. However, no one noticed that deep in Murongyu's eyes, there was a deep sense of mockery. No one knew if he was mocking those who wanted to kill him or himself. The deeper he went, the stronger the beasts in the forbidden soul water region. However, Muronyu was very high profile today. He erupted with an incomparably powerful pressure. Everywhere he passed, many beasts retreated. Soon, Muronyu went deep into the forbidden soul water region on a huge island. The weapon fragment that contained a huge amount of power was found on this island. Everything on the island was normal. There are no traces of an ambush. Muronyu glanced around and didn't find any light of cultivator's power. In other words, Muronyu didn't find any experts hiding nearby for the time being. However, Muronyu found some hidden fluctuations in a few places on the island. Of course, there was still a power light, and it was an extremely strong power light. That power light should be the king weapon fragment. These fluctuations were very hidden. If Muronyu didn't control 1/9 of the holy world's origin energy, he probably wouldn't have discovered them. These fluctuations are definitely strange. Muronyu sneered in his heart. However, he pretended not to notice and strode in. However, he had secretly raised his power to the limit. As for divine sense, after soul power was banned, divine sense was no longer useful. Now, it could only extend to about 100 miles in his body. This distance was negligible to experts of their level. Therefore, Muronyu couldn't be bothered to extend his divine sense. This is the king weapon fragment? Soon, Muronyu arrived near the king weapon fragment. From afar, it was a king weapon fragment that was about the size of a palm. Upon closer inspection, the king weapon fragment seemed to be the tip of a saber. Enormous power light. If I refine it, I'm afraid it can raise my cultivation by 2 small realms and reach rank 7 chaotic ancestor saint. Muronyu was shocked and excited. I'd like to see how heavy this little thing is. While Muronyu was excited, he couldn't help but step forward and reach out to grab the king weapon fragment. Ha! Muronyu, you're finally here. At this moment, a cold and thunderous laughter came from afar. At the same time, several figures appeared in Muronyu's line of sight. They surrounded Muronyu from afar. Muronyu wasn't surprised by this. If this was really a conspiracy, the master of the conspiracy should have appeared. However, when Muronyu looked at those people, he couldn't help but be shocked. Supreme Tempered 100. Muronyu had already guessed the existence of the other party. Therefore, he wasn't surprised by the appearance of Supreme Tempered 100. He was surprised by 3 of the other people. 3 Supreme Tempered beings. One of the 3 Supreme Tempered beings was looking at Muronyu with a murderous gaze. He was gnashing his teeth, as if he couldn't wait to eat Muronyu alive. Muronyu also felt a sense of familiarity from this person's aura. With a thought, Muronyu knew who this person was. This guy tried to kill him several times, but he couldn't in the end. This person was the Supreme Tempered being from the immemorial battlefield. The 2 Supreme Tempered beings beside him should also be one of the Supreme Tempered beings from the immemorial battlefield. In addition to these 4 Supreme Tempered beings, Muronyu also saw another acquaintance, Feng Sanxiong. However, Feng Sanxiong's strength had broken through again at this time. He had already reached the level of Supreme Tempered being. His strength was extremely powerful. At this time, he was looking at Muronyu with incomparably resentful eyes. He couldn't wait to kill Muronyu with 1 punch. This guy is really hard to kill. However, I'll kill him again today. I want to see if he really can't be killed. Muronyu pondered in his heart. Muronyu had already placed his hand on Feng Sanxiong's face. Feng Sanxiong, are you still not afraid of death? Delivering yourself to my door for me to kill again? Feng Sanxiong's face immediately turned gloomy. His eyes stared at Muronyu as if they were spitting fire. How many times had Muronyu killed him? He was killed again and resurrected again and again. Although he had cultivated Phoenix's nirvana to an extremely high level, he couldn't resurrect infinitely. There would be a day when he would die. However, Muronyu wanted to kill him today? It was simply a fool's dream. Muronyu, let's talk about it after you survive today. Without the power of the soul, you are nothing. Feng Sangqiong sneered. He didn't bicker with Muronyu. He just sneered and took a step back. Even if I die, I will definitely drag you down. You can rest assured. Muronyu smiled faintly. He didn't put these four supreme, tempered beings in his eyes at all. Hearing Murongyu's words, Feng Sangqiong's face changed. However, he only glanced at Balian and the others and didn't say anything. Muronyu, kill yourself. Balian took a step forward and looked at Muronyu with a sneer. Kill myself? Wishful thinking. Muronyu, you will die in my hands. The supreme tempered being who had a grudge with Muronyu in the ancient battlefield looked at Muronyu with a ferocious expression. Murongyu's face turned cold. Then, a mocking expression appeared on his face. Do you think that I would come if I wasn't confident? Don't you know that our Shenzhen also has a supreme tempered being? Or do you think that you can definitely kill me with your strength? While speaking, Sun Feiyong and the other two supreme tempered beings had already appeared beside Muronyu. Muronyu directly locked on a Feng Sangqiong. Sun Feiyong, when we make a move, kill him immediately. No need to be polite. Feng Sangqiong's face turned green at once. He didn't know if he should feel angry or honored. Muronyu actually paid special attention to him. Chapter 1784. Sun Feiyong didn't say anything and only nodded slightly. His enormous divine sense had already locked on a Feng Sangqiong. Although Feng Sangqiong was powerful and had reached the first step of the Supreme Being level, he wasn't a Supreme Being. However, he wasn't a Supreme Being after all. The gap between him and a Supreme Being was still huge. After being locked onto by Sun Feiyong, his face turned pale. If Sun Feiyong wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be able to escape at all. Of course, if Balian and the other three could help, they might be able to save him. However, would Balian and the others help him? Feng Sangqiong's heart became gloomy as an incomparably strong aura of death gradually rose from his heart. Seeing the sudden appearance of Sun Feiyong and the other two, Balian's pupils shrank. Although the three of them had changed their appearances, their aura hadn't changed completely. Balian immediately recognized their identities. Weren't they Yao Tian, Hua Tai, and the demon race's supreme being Mountain Crusher? At this moment, Balian, Feng Sangqiong, and the others finally understood who had broken through to the supreme being level. Strictly speaking, it wasn't that someone had broken through to the supreme being level, but that Sun Feiyong and the others had merged with Yao Tian and the other two's bodies. However, Balian quickly regained his composure. Although the appearance of three supreme beings on Murongyu's side was a little unexpected. However, Muronyu still couldn't escape from their palms. There were four supreme beings. They only needed three supreme beings to hold back Yao Tian and the others. Then, the remaining one could easily kill Muronyu. Therefore, they were still relatively calm. Kill! The supreme being who had a grudge with Muronyu in the ancient battlefield roared and took the lead to attack. He directly stretched out his hands and grabbed hundreds of millions of space-time, smashing it towards Murongyu's head. If Murongyu's head was smashed, then Murongyu's entire body would explode. Even his soul wouldn't be able to escape. After all, this was the forbidden soul water region. Swish! Muronyu had long been on guard against their sudden attack. Therefore, the moment Tai Ching attacked, his figure flashed and retreated. Tai Ching was the third of the three primordial sovereigns, the one who had a grudge with Muronyu. The eldest of the three supremes was called the Grand Master. Taiwu was the name of their second brother. Bang! Right after Muronyu retreated, Tai Ching's attack came crashing down on him, crushing the space where Muronyu was originally standing into millions of pieces. Seeing that Muronyu had actually dodged his sneak attack, Tai Ching could not help but reveal a look of surprise on his face. Even Balian, Grand Master, and Grand Marshal were shocked, because Murongyu's reaction and speed were too fast. His speed was on par with theirs. In fact, he was even slightly faster than them. Moreover, This was the result of his soul power being suppressed. What if his soul power wasn't suppressed? Just how terrifying was his speed? What Bao Lian and the others didn't know was that Murong Yu's speed had nothing to do with his soul. Just now, his speed was indeed close to his extreme speed. It was precisely because of this that Murong Yu dared to enter deep into the soul forbidden water region. Otherwise, although there were weapon fragments here that contained huge power, Murong Yu would never risk his life for nothing. Kill Feng Sangxiong. Murong Yu roared as he retreated. In fact, without waiting for Murong Yu's order, Sun Fiang, who had already reacted, had already unleashed his strongest attack towards Feng Sangxiong. At the same time, LV Feiyue and Qi Junjie also faced Grandmaster and Grand Marshal, and the two started fighting. The Grandmaster and Grand Marshal were the strongest of the four Supremes on the opposing side. Therefore, LV Feiyue and the others entangled them. As for Tai Ching and Balian, they belonged to Murong Yu. Was Murong Yu their opponent? Perhaps without the soul attack, Murong Yu couldn't kill Balian and Grandmaster. However, Sun Feiyang and the other two believed that even if Murong Yu couldn't defeat them, he would definitely not be killed by the two of them. Murong Yu, die for me. Balian roared and took a step forward. His figure flashed and shattered the endless space, turning into a stream of light and fiercely slamming towards Murong Yu. During this process, he even used his strongest offensive combat skill, erupting with an incomparably powerful power as he violently attacked. The two of you will definitely die today. Balian, last time you ran away without a fight. This time, let's see where you can escape to. Murong Yu rapidly retreated and sneered at the two of them. The two of them were enraged, and their power grew stronger. Dying. While retreating, Murong Yu suddenly pointed at Tai Ching and roared. At the same time, a terrifying aura that made many Supremes present tremble with fear suddenly appeared out of thin air. An instant later, a huge energy beam that was like the Milky Way in the sky suddenly shattered the space above Murong Yu's head and directly drilled out. Rumble. As soon as the huge energy beam appeared, it let out an earth-shattering roar like a primordial true dragon. Then, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it smashed through space, locking onto Tai Ching and fiercely pouncing towards him. It was extremely fast. In just an instant, the huge energy beam had already appeared in front of Tai Ching and fiercely slammed towards him. At this moment, Tai Ching's heart was immediately enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Tai Ching's expression instantly changed. He knew that if he couldn't resist this energy, he might be killed. Therefore, he retreated without any hesitation. However, although he was fast, the energy beam was even faster. Not only did Tai Ching's rapid retreat not widen the distance between him and the energy beam, but on the contrary, it was getting closer and closer. A supreme artifact. In a hurry, Tai Ching finally summoned his supreme artifact. It blocked in front of him. It was a pitch-black bell. As soon as the bell appeared, it rapidly expanded against the wind and instantly grew to the size of a small mountain. Then, it went straight for Murong Yu's huge energy beam. Clang! In the blink of an eye, the enormous force collided with the supreme artifact bell. After an earth-shattering boom, Tai Ching's supreme artifact burst out with dazzling five-colored holy light. Then, with a whoosh, it was sent flying and instantly disappeared from everyone's sight. The supreme artifact couldn't even block one of Murong Yu's attacks. On the other hand, although Murong Yu's energy beam had consumed about 1/10 of its power, it didn't stop. However, they didn't stop at all and continued to attack Tai Ching like a storm. Puff! The supreme artifact was sent flying, and the overflowing damage directly injured Tai Ching's blood. Therefore, although Tai Ching didn't want to vomit blood, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. However, Tai Ching didn't slow down at all. In the end, the energy beam still caught up to him. Tai Ching roared and grabbed at the void. The next moment, a huge saber that burst out five-colored holy light appeared in his hand. Then, the energy in Tai Ching's body surged into the saber in his hand like a tidal wave. Suddenly, the The saber burst out with dazzling five-colored holy light and a terrifying aura that could destroy the world. "Break for me," Tai Ching bellowed. Wielding his saber with both hands, he ruthlessly slashed at Murong Yu's incoming attack. Boom! After an earth-shattering boom, Murong Yu's energy beam was shattered by Tai Ching's saber. It turned into the most primitive energy and dissipated into the world. However, Tai Ching didn't have it easy either. His hands were shattered into dust. At the same time, he was sent flying while spitting out blood. At this moment, Balian finally reacted. Everything happened too fast, so fast that even supreme beings couldn't react to it. Swoosh! At the same time that Tai Ching shattered the enormous power, Murong Yu had already taken a step forward and appeared in front of Tai Ching in the blink of an eye. The Xin Yuan sword appeared in Murong Yu's hand, and Murong Yu slashed down. Tai Ching sneered when he sensed the power that Murong Yu unleashed. Although Murong Yu's power was powerful, the gap between them was too big. As a result, Tai Ching's figure came to a halt. Then, he threw a punch at Murong Yu. He wanted to kill Murong Yu with one punch. Seeing that Tai Ching didn't continue to run, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with deep mockery. Noticing the mockery in Murong Yu's eyes, Tai Ching instinctively felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Die! Murong Yu roared, and the Xin Yuan sword in his hand suddenly sped up. Puff! Tai Ching's hand was directly cut off by Xin Yuan's sword. After cutting off Tai Ching's hand, the Xin Yuan sword didn't stop at all. It continued to press forward. Puff! Before Tai Ching could even react, his body was cut in half by the Xin Yuan sword. At the same time, Murong Yu shook his hand, and a terrifying power that contained a destructive aura erupted from the Xin Yuan sword. It directly shattered Tai Ching's body. Chi! Tai Ching's soul rushed out of the soul space and charged into the distance. "Where do you think you're going?" Murong Yu roared and slashed with the Xin Yuan sword. Under Tai Ching's horrified gaze, his soul was directly cut into pieces. Rumble! Thick clouds of blood instantly enveloped the entire saint's world, and then a rain of blood poured down. Another honorable died. Tai Ching was killed. Tai Ching, third brother. Tai Ching and Tai Wu roared out in fear when they saw this. Afterwards, they unleashed their most powerful attacks at the same time, directly knocking back LV Feiyue and Shi Junjie before charging towards Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu was not afraid at all. As a matter of fact, he even sneered. Instead of retreating, he advanced. The Xin Yuan sword in his hand shone brightly as he directly went up to receive them. He began fighting against Tai Ching and Tai Wu. Chapter 1785. Just as Murong Yu was fighting with Grand Master and Grand Marshal, a shrill scream came from the side. It was Feng Sangqiong. Actually, Sun Feiyong had been fighting Feng Sangqiong since the beginning. Moreover, Feng Sangqiong's strength was far inferior to Tai Ching's. But why did he die slower than Tai Ching? There was a reason for this. It wasn't that Feng Sangqiong was powerful, nor was it that Sun Feiyong was too useless. It was that the speed at which Murong Yu killed Tai Ching was too fast. It was so fast that even supreme martial artists couldn't react. Two people died. Feng Sangqiong wasn't a supreme martial artist. His death wasn't much of a threat to the battle. But Tai Ching's death left Grandmaster and the rest with 3 supreme martial artists. On Murong Yu's side, there were also 3 supreme beings. Although Murong Yu couldn't use soul power, he could still kill Tai Ching. And he was even stronger than Grandmaster and the rest. Indeed, Tai Ching had been caught off guard, which was why he was killed by Murong Yu. But if it was Grandmaster and the rest, even if they sneak attacked Tai Ching, they probably couldn't kill him. Therefore, Murong Yu's strength was stronger than any of the 4 supreme martial artists. But wasn't Murong Yu unable to use soul attack? Why did he still have the strength to kill Tai Ching? His strength was only a rank 5 chaotic ancestor saint. Could it be because of the Xin Yuan sword in his hand? Grandmaster and Grand Marshal were inexplicably sad and furious. But at the same time, they were very powerful. At first, they thought that Murong Yu's strength was because of the Xianyuan sword. But after fighting for a while, they were shocked to find that Murong-Yu's power was not below theirs. Even if the two of them joined forces, they could only fight to a draw with Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu is only a rank 5 chaotic ancestor saint. A rank 5 chaotic ancestor saint had the strength comparable to a supreme martial artist? This was too illogical. Was this possible? Or had he already reached the supreme martial artist realm, and now he was just suppressing his realm and pretending to be weak? The more he fought, the more shocked he became. Furthermore, they were shocked to discover that Murong-Yu's battle prowess was gradually increasing during the battle, becoming stronger and stronger. What was going on? The Grand Master and Grand Marshal became more and more confused. In reality, it wasn't just the Grand Master and the Grand Master who were puzzled. The others, including Sun Feiyong and the others, were puzzled as well. The only person who knew was Murong-Yu himself. Murong-Yu's soul power was powerful. However, at this stage, the most powerful thing was not his soul power or the power of primal chaos. It was the power of faith. After uniting the Saint's world, tremendous amounts of faith energy would surge into Murong-Yu's body at all times. Some were strong, some were weak, and some were impure. Over the past few days, Murong-Yu hadn't been doing nothing. He continued to purify and compress the power of faith. Right now, the power of faith was even more terrifying than soul power. Of course, this was only temporary. Moreover, although the power of faith was powerful, its quantity was far inferior to his power of primal chaos and soul power. Primal chaos aside, the tree of life in Murong-Yu's body could instantly devour endless primal chaos from the depths of primal chaos. It could even be said that Murong-Yu's power of primal chaos was almost limitless. His soul sea had also reached a radius of 10 billion kilometers, and the power of the soul within it was extremely vast. It was almost limitless. Comparatively speaking, the power of faith was just too little. Moreover, it consumed a lot, and he needed to rely on his believers. Moreover, against these powerful sovereigns, he needed to use pure, compressed power of faith. Otherwise, he would not be able to kill them. Earlier, Murong-Yu had exploded with a large amount of power of faith to quickly kill Tai Ching. The huge power that had appeared before Murong-Yu had attacked came from the projection of 100,000 experts on the Saint rankings in Hichu Luoshu. However, that was not enough to kill Tai Ching. There was still a huge gap between the experts on the Saint rankings and sovereigns. Now, the power of faith that Murong-Yu had accumulated over the years had been consumed by more than 40 to 50%. Although the power of faith was powerful, it was not forbidden. The three of you, kill Balian for me. Seeing that Sun Feiyong and the other two wanted to help, Murong-Yu immediately shouted. Therefore, Sun Feiyong and the other two locked onto Balian and attacked. Balian had long been scared out of his wits. He could not even block Murong-Yu alone. As for the three Supreme Being experts, he had no way of blocking them. Therefore, before Sun Feiyong and the other two could pounce over, he turned and ran. Sun Feiyong and the other two were helpless. They secretly cursed Balian for being shameless and wanted to chase after him. However, they were stopped by Murong-Yu. The three of you, stall the two of them for me. I'll kill them. Tai Zhu and Tai Wu looked at each other and immediately understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Therefore, they both unleashed their strongest attacks and directly sent Murong-Yu flying. In the next moment, they turned around and quickly fled into the distance. Although they wanted nothing more than to eat Murong-Yu alive, Murong-Yu alone was able to fight them to a draw. If Sun Feiyong and the other two sovereigns were added, the two of them would definitely die. Although they wanted to avenge Tai Ching, they did not want to leave their lives behind. Therefore, they immediately fled. These bastards are too cowardly and tasteless. They actually fled. Sun Feiyong looked in the direction that the two of them fled and cursed. The stronger you are, the more you fear death. If it were you, would you fight the four of us alone? You'd be a big idiot. Chi Junjia sneered. LV Feiyong and Sun Feiyong nodded slightly. Then, they looked at Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu felt that it was a pity. Before coming here, He had planned to kill one or two sovereigns and leave their bodies for Shenzhen to create one or two more sovereigns. However, although Tai Ching was killed, even his body was shattered into dust. Murongyu was helpless. Although the power of faith was powerful, it was not as useful as the power of the soul. The power of the soul could directly erase Tai Ching's soul, but the power of faith could not. In other words, Murongyu was still unable to skillfully use the power of faith. Otherwise, his combat strength would not be growing stronger as the battle progressed. This was because he was becoming more proficient in using the power of faith. It won't be too late to kill them next time. Murongyu looked at the palm-sized weapon fragment and said indifferently, as long as he increased his cultivation by 2 more minor realms, his strength would be even more powerful. In the future, it would be easier for him to kill sovereigns. Could this weapon fragment be a ruler's weapon? But doesn't a ruler's weapon emit rainbow holy light? Why is this weapon fragment only shining faintly? Standing in front of the weapon fragment, Sun Feiyong and the other two sized it up. Meanwhile, LV Feiyue reached out his hand and grabbed the weapon fragment. He tried, but the palm-sized fragment couldn't move at all. This shocked Murongyu and the others. In the end, LV Feiyue gathered all his strength on his right hand and grabbed it. It shook. Yes, it only shook. Then it stopped moving. Even with all his strength, he could not grab the weapon fragment. How heavy was it? And this was only the tip of the saber. Just the tip of the saber had such a terrifying weight. How heavy was the saber before it was broken? How much strength did it have? Sun Feiyong and Qi Junjie did not believe it, so they tried. However, the result was the same. They could not grab the weapon fragment at all. This is definitely not a ruler's weapon. A ruler's weapon is definitely not this heavy. The three of them unanimously agreed. However, if it was not a ruler's weapon, then what level of weapon did it belong to? Murongyu already had an answer in his heart. This was definitely the weapon of an extraterrestrial expert. Someone like the Sun Monarch was far more powerful than a ruler. This weapon fragment was most likely the weapon of an expert on the level of the Sun Monarch. Only someone with their strength could use such a weapon. However, the more this was the case, the more Murongyu liked it. This weapon fragment was so heavy. The power it contained was definitely terrifying. I'll give it a try. Murongyu strode forward. However, the result was the same as Sun Feiyong and the others. After many attempts, they could only pick it up slightly. In fact, Murongyu could not even absorb it with the Hichu Luo Shu. This caused Murongyu to feel distressed. Could it be that we can directly refine it here? But this place is really too dangerous. Once we are ambushed, there is a high possibility that we will be killed. Why don't you try using the origin energy? At this moment, a slightly old voice sounded in Murongyu's ears. It was the voice of the Holy World's origin energy. Murongyu was delighted. Yes, although this weapon fragment was heavy, it could be controlled by the Holy World's origin energy within the range of the Holy World. Thus, Murongyu used the Holy World's origin energy to cover this area. In the next moment, under the shocked gazes of Sun Feiyong and the others, Murongyu easily picked up the weapon fragment. It's that simple? Sun Feiyong and the others were instantly thrown into disarray. Then, they looked at Murongyu with incomparable admiration. They had personally tested the weapon fragment and knew how heavy it was. Dong! When Murongyu threw the weapon fragment into the Hichu Luo Shu, he clearly heard an extremely heavy sound. He even felt the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo tremble slightly. One must know that even if a supreme being slapped the Hichu Luo Shu with his palm, he would not be able to make the Hichu Luo Shu budge. One could imagine how heavy this weapon fragment was. Of course, this was also because of Murongyu. If Murongyu was stronger, the Hichu Luo Shu would also be stronger. At that time, not to mention a weapon fragment, even the entire weapon would not be able to make the Hichu Luo Shu budge. Chapter 1786. Inside He-Tu and Luo Shu, Murongyu held the weapon fragment in his hand and examined it. He wasn't using the origin energy of the Holy World right now. However, because he was in the Hichu Luoshu, Muron you could control everything here. Therefore, Muron you could also pick up the weapon fragment. However, the Hichu Luoshu wasn't high enough. Although Muron you could pick it up, it would take some effort. After half a day, Muron Yu shook his head helplessly. He couldn't tell what the weapon fragment was made of. However, he was sure of one thing. The weapon fragment contained a terrifying amount of power. Although it was only a fragment, it could definitely destroy a supreme artifact in an instant. In fact, even a ruler artifact wouldn't be a match for this weapon fragment. It was like comparing a supreme artifact to a low-grade saint artifact. A low-grade saint artifact wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Even supreme and ruler artifacts were the same in front of this weapon fragment. It wasn't that supreme and ruler artifacts were trash. It was that this weapon fragment was too high level. Hichu, do you know what grade of sacred artifact this fragment is? Muron Yu asked he too in a somewhat distressed manner. The reason he was sad was because he was faced with a decision. If he refined this weapon fragment, Muron Yu could guarantee that he would at least be able to raise his cultivation by 2 minor realms. However, if he refined it, it would be a pity. After all, this weapon fragment could easily kill a supreme being expert. Hichu appeared and shook his head. He didn't know at all. The origin energy of the holy world didn't know either. After all, their vision was limited to the holy world. They had no idea what it was like outside the holy world. Then should I refine it? Muron Yu muttered to himself. If you're not strong enough, you won't be able to use it even if it's 100 times more powerful. However, if you're strong enough, you'll be able to kill a supreme or even a ruler with your bare hands, Hichu said solemnly. He didn't help Muron Yu make a decision. He only analyzed 2 possibilities. Muron Yu was helpless. If he borrowed the origin energy of the world, he could easily wield this weapon fragment. However, the consumption of the origin energy of the holy world would be terrifying. Otherwise, Muron Yu wouldn't have used the Hichu Luoshu's ability instead of the origin energy of the holy world. If Muron Yu were to suddenly bring out this weapon fragment in the middle of a great battle, he would be able to catch his opponent off guard and instantly kill a supreme being. After half a day, Muron Yu finally made a decision. He's going to keep it. As for his strength, he could only slowly. At this moment, the news of Muron Yu killing another sovereign had already spread throughout the saint's world. As a result, more and more people became his believers, providing him with an endless supply of power of faith, making his power of faith even stronger. In the following period of time, no one else came out to cause trouble. The original Holy Master of the Cloud, Piercing Island, Song Tian, was also captured and killed by Muron Yu. That bastard actually dared to use Muron Yu's family to threaten him. He really deserved to die. However, other than Song Tian, the disciples of the Cloud Piercing Island were all released by Muron Yu. However, the resources and treasures that Muron Yu took away were not returned. As a result, although the Cloud Piercing Island still existed, it only existed in name. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of years had passed. After tens of thousands of years, the holy world was finally unified. The various races got along pretty well. However, during these tens of thousands of years, Muron Yu didn't discover any more powerful items. As a result, he was unable to break through. However, there was still some good news. Muron Yu's clone had successfully gained control of the Dragon Clan. His clone's strength had already charged into the top 10 of the holy rankings. Moreover, his strength was still rising rapidly. It was unknown when he would be able to break through the holy rankings and become a supreme being. The unification is on the right track. There are no more supreme beings coming to cause trouble. It's time to leave. On this day, Muron Yu directly left Shenzhen and disappeared into the distance. However, he didn't bring anyone with him. He left Sun Feiyong and the other 2 supreme beings in Shenzhen. With their strength, it was enough to guard Shenzhen. Moreover, if anything happened, Muron Yu could rush back immediately. In the holy world, there are many secret realms and danger zones. For example, the forbidden soul water region where Murong Yu found the mysterious weapon fragment was a danger zone. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of years had passed. In these tens of thousands of years, Murong Yu had been to many danger zones and secret realms. With the support of the holy world's origin energy and his own strength, although he encountered many dangers, he was only able to avert them in the end. The desolate God's secret realm. This was an extremely dangerous secret realm. Legend had it that this secret realm was connected to the outer realm. One could even reach the outer realm through the secret realm. Of course, one could go to the outer realm from here, and the outer realm could also enter here. What was the outer realm the most? It was definitely not the supreme beings of the holy world. There were only about 1,000 supreme beings in the holy world. Most of them were various ferocious beasts and wild beasts. And this secret realm was called the desolate God's secret realm. Naturally, there were a large number of wild beasts. Moreover, the weakest of these wild beasts had reached the top 10 of the holy rankings. It could be said to be extremely terrifying. Not to mention the people of the holy world, even the supreme beings didn't dare to enter this secret realm, because there were still supreme beings in the desolate God's secret realm. Once they encountered these terrifying wild beasts, even supreme beings would die. Moreover, there was nothing good in this secret realm. Therefore, even supreme beings weren't willing to enter here. Murong Yu was also forced to enter here because he had no choice. This couldn't be helped. After tens of thousands of years, his strength had almost not improved at all. And although the holy world seemed to be peaceful now, but this was because those supreme beings hadn't returned to the holy world. Once those supreme beings returned to the holy world, Murong Yu wouldn't be able to suppress the holy world. Therefore, he needed more strength. Moreover, even if it wasn't for the holy world, he also needed to increase his strength. Otherwise, when could he break through to the supreme being realm? Roar! Murong Yu had just appeared in the desolate God's secret realm when an ear-piercing roar came from afar. In the next moment, the sky above Murong Yu suddenly darkened. Looking up, he saw a large piece of incomparably ferocious scale armor. Spreading out his divine sense, Murong Yu discovered that it was an incomparably huge wild beast that covered the sky. Murong Yu was quite familiar with wild beasts. In the divine world, many continents were formed from the corpses of wild beasts. One could imagine how huge the bodies of these wild beasts were. Back then, the former human race Great Alliance even wanted to revive wild and borrow the power of wild beasts to destroy the sacred race. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of wild beasts was. The strength of this wild beast that pounced at Murong Yu wasn't weak either. It had the strength of the top 10 on the holy rankings. However, this kind of strength was nothing to Murong Yu at all. Murong Yu didn't make a move at all. With a thought, a holy soul directly slashed over. Puffed. Although this wild beast strength was powerful, it couldn't block Murong Yu's soul attack at all. In an instant, its soul was minced into pieces, and that incomparably huge corpse also fell down rapidly. Murong Yu suddenly reached out a large hand and grabbed at Desolate's corpse. Murong Yu's large hand expanded with the wind, expanding rapidly. By the time he got close to Desolate, his large hand was already 10 times the size of Desolate. Therefore, he easily grabbed Desolate's corpse. Then, he directly pulled it back. During this process, his large hand and Desolate's corpse rapidly shrank. When Murong Yu withdrew his large hand, Desolate had already become the size of a puppy. With a thought, Murong Yu directly threw this wild beast into the primal chaos furnace. Then, he refined it, increasing Murong Yu's strength. Although this wild beast's strength wasn't much, it won in its huge body, and the power it contained was still not bad. It was enough to make Murong Yu's strength a little. Although it wasn't much, it was fine. Moreover, the desolate God's secret realm had the most wild beasts. In the future, I'll cultivate here. Murong Yu's eyes flickered. He didn't have any guilt about killing Desolate, nor would he worry about causing any killing, because Desolate constantly wanted to devour the holy world. In the outer realm, those supremes were also constantly fighting with Desolate. Roar! Muronyu hadn't even refined that wild beast when a second wild beast roared and rushed over. This time, Muronyu directly rushed up. Put on. This wild beast, whose strength reached the top 10 of the Saint ranking, had its soul erased by Muronyu before it could even react. Then, he threw it into the primal chaos furnace and began to refine it. One wild beast after another was refined, and Muronyu's strength continued to increase. Unknowingly, he had reached the peak of the 5th rank. However, after reaching the peak of the 5th rank, Muronyu continued to refine these ordinary wild beasts, which had no effect. He couldn't continue to increase his strength. Could it be that I have to refine the Supremes? Muronyu glanced at the depths of the desolate god's secret realm, and a look of helplessness flashed across his face. Over the years, he had almost swept through the outer region of the desolate god's secret realm. However, he didn't go deeper. That was because there were balls of incomparably powerful light and terrifying aura erupting from the depths. There must be a lot of Supremes inside. However, with an 8-star soul, faith power, and mysterious weapon fragments, Muronyu finally stepped forward and walked into the depths of the desolate god's secret realm. Boom! Not long after, a wild beast the size of a calf with a terrifying aura appeared in front of Muronyu. It roared at Muronyu in a low voice. A Supremes, desolate. Muronyu's pupils shrank, and then he took a step forward. His figure flashed and broke through the sky, slamming into the wild beast. At the same time, something big happened in the outer realm of the holy world. Something big enough to change the current situation of the holy world. Chapter 1787. What? The ruler has already left the outer realm and went to the endless starry sky to find a way to break through reincarnation? In the outer realms, the news of the sovereign leaving the outer realms had spread like wildfire among the more than 1,000 Supremes. In the beginning, the Supremes naturally didn't believe it, but as they continued to verify it, and some people saw the ruler leave with their own eyes, so everyone believed it. The Supremes were the top existences in the holy world. But all this time, the Supremes were like ancient sacred mountains floating above their heads. Terrifying pressure constantly pressed down on them, making it hard for them to breathe. Under the suppression of heaven, the Supremes didn't even dare to return to the holy world. They could only fight and fight in the outer realm. But because heaven was just too powerful, the Supremes could only submit to his tyranny. I heard that heaven left the outer realm for quite a long time. The Supremes spread the news, and they were all wild with joy. They looked as if they had been freed. It's best if he never comes back. Someone thought. Heaven was just too powerful, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly under his suppression. Now that he left the outer realm to find a way to break through reincarnation, the Supremes finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although they didn't know why heaven could roam the endless starry sky without breaking through reincarnation, but this wasn't what they cared about. So, in less than a day, there weren't many Supremes left in the outer realm. All of them returned to the holy world. In the outer realm, they were constantly fighting with powerful chaos beasts and desolates. They couldn't have peace, but there were no such terrifying battles in the holy world. So, they returned to the holy world immediately. But now, the holy world had been unified by Muronyu, and the situation had changed. Even after the Supremes returned, the forces that belonged to them were no longer as respectful as before. In fact, he was treating them like strangers. Muronyu, a Supremes, gritted his teeth. Although the Supremes knew about Muronyu's deeds, they still couldn't help but be angry when they saw it with their own eyes. Because when they returned to the forces they created, they realized his disciples no longer worshipped him, the supreme martial artist. Instead, they worshipped a completely unrelated person, Muronyu. Right now, Muronyu had become the true lord of the entire Saints world. Originally, these supreme beings wanted to enjoy the feeling of being worshipped after returning. But now, he didn't feel that way at all. Because of that, these supreme beings were all furious. They directly erupted with terrifying power and methods, suppressing the forces that originally belonged to them and separating them from the Great Unification. This included the 10 great sacred lands of a human race. The true martial temple and the unparalleled palace were not the only supremes in the 10 great holy lands of the human clan. The other 7 holy lands also had supreme beings. After these supreme beings returned, they took control of their respective holy lands, separating themselves from the Great Unification. The other autarchs of the Saints' world did the same. In less than a day, the painstaking efforts of Murongyu over the years were destroyed by those supremes. The unification of the Saints' world shattered once more. Everything became nothing. In fact, those supremes even started to attack Shenzhen because they were angry at Murongyu. However, Shenzhen wasn't someone to be trifled with either. With Sun Feiyong and the other 2 supreme martial artists holding down the fort, ordinary people really weren't their match. Moreover, Zhao Jiqing and the others were definitely extremely smart people. After discovering that a large number of supreme martial artists had returned, they smelled danger. Therefore, Shenzhen's disciples immediately retreated back to the primordial world. Sun Feiyong and the others also retreated back to the primordial world after blocking the attacks of some supreme martial artists. After they left, they directly destroyed the teleportation formation to the primordial world. In this way, without knowing the entrance to the primordial world, no matter how powerful those supreme martial artists were, they wouldn't be able to destroy Shenzhen. Among them, the people who wanted to kill Murongyu the most were not the supreme martial artists of the demon race or the supreme martial artists of the sacred race. After all, the demon race and the sacred race hadn't really been destroyed by Murongyu. The human race's 10 great sacred lands hated Murongyu the most. This was because Murongyu had almost destroyed their orthodoxies. Although their sacred lands still existed, their resources and various methods had been snatched away by Murongyu a long time ago. They couldn't be returned. Supreme Martial Artist was still fine, but Supreme Martial Artist was incomparably furious. Moreover, he even said that he would personally kill Murongyu. In addition, a few other Supreme Martial Artists had issued orders to kill Murongyu. In an instant, Murongyu appeared at the forefront of the storm. In addition, Murongyu had the chaotic, celestial body constitution. Almost all the Supreme Martial Artists wanted to kill him and take over his body. However, Murongyu seemed to have evaporated from the world, and there was no trace of him. The Supreme Martial Artists were helpless. Murongyu was nowhere to be seen, and Shenzhen and Murongyu's relatives seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Even if they wanted to use Murongyu's relatives to threaten him, they couldn't do it. So, where was Murongyu right now? He was facing off against a supreme martial artist in the desolate, mysterious realm. It was a desolate the size of a calf. Didn't they say that the stronger a desolate was, the larger its body would be? What was going on? Looking at the desolate that was only the size of a calf, Murongyu was puzzled. However, he didn't underestimate this desolate. Although it was small, the power it contained was extremely terrifying. Roar! The desolate roared fiercely and attacked Murongyu with incomparable speed. Good timing. Murongyu roared in his heart, and his right hand swung out fiercely. With a chi sound, a palm-sized black shadow shot out from his palm, directly cutting through billions of space-time, and appeared in front of the desolate in an instant. It was silent. The desolate didn't put that black shadow in its eyes at all. With just a slap, he wanted to send the black shadow flying. However, something that shocked it happened. That black shadow directly shattered its attack. Then, under its horrified gaze, that black shadow quickly enlarged. In the end, it directly entered its body. The desolate only felt pain in its body, and then its vision turned black, and it lost consciousness. Plop! Desolation, who was the size of a calf, fell straight to the ground, smashing the ground into a mess. It was killed just like that. Murongyu looked at the desolate's corpse in disbelief. His incomparably huge divine sense constantly scanned its body. Even after confirming that the desolate was dead, he still couldn't believe it. This was an honorable desolate, and it was extremely powerful. However, it was killed like killing a chicken or a dog. No, it was killed even easier than killing a chicken. It wasn't that the Desolate was too weak, but that the weapon fragment was too terrifying. Moreover, Muronyu also discovered that the weapon fragment actually only crushed the Desolate soul. Even though the Desolate was dead, there's only a wound on its body, and its physical body was basically fine. It killed an honorable like slaughtering a dog. Muronyu was shocked, but at the same time, he was somewhat glad. He was glad that he didn't rashly refine the weapon fragment. Otherwise, his soul might have been directly erased. His soul was powerful, and it had already reached the 8-star level. However, there was still a huge gap between it and the weapon fragment. He didn't have the slightest confidence that he could withstand the soul attack of the weapon fragment. From the fact that the Honorable Desolate was instantly killed, it could be seen how terrifying the weapon fragment was. However, although the weapon fragment was powerful, what made Muronyu dissatisfied was that it consumed too much of the sacred world's origin energy. With the origin energy he obtained now, it was simply not enough to use it a few times. Of course, Muronyu just wanted to test the power of the weapon fragment this time. In the future, unless it was necessary, he wouldn't use the weapon fragment. This was one of his trump cards. After all, his soul power was no longer his trump card. Too many people knew about it. Of course, he still had the power of faith, and it wasn't known to the public yet. Refine. What made Muronyu feel a little relieved was that although there were a lot of honorable desolates in the depths of the desolate God's secret land, however, each desolate seemed to have a specific territory. After Muronyu killed this desolate, no more desolates came over. Therefore, Muronyu had enough time to refine this desolate. The power obtained from refining a desolate was about the same as refining an honorable weapon, and it was a great supplement for Muronyu. However, an honorable desolate was still unable to help Muronyu break through. However, there wasn't much here, and honorable desolates were the most. Therefore, Muronyu kept hunting desolates. Finally, when he refined 100 desolates that had reached the level of a 1-star supreme, his cultivation level finally broke through. From the 5th level chaotic ancestor saint to the 6th level chaotic ancestor saint, there were still 3 more levels to reach the peak chaotic ancestor saint. Only when he reached the peak chaotic ancestor saint would Muronyu have the qualifications to break through to the honorable saint realm. Rank 40,000 on the holy list. This was Muronyu's current ranking on the holy list. However, Muronyu didn't care about the ranking on the holy list for a long time, because his strength had already reached the honorable saint realm. With the increase in strength, the power of the soul power will be further strengthened. The power of faith will also be stronger. However, why is the power of faith increasing very little recently? Muronyu frowned slightly and immediately contacted his clone. Muronyu was immediately shocked when he made the connection. The reason why his power of faith was increasing and decreasing was that the holy world was already divided by more than 1,000 honorable saints. Shangzhen was even forced to escape into the immemorial world. Honorable saints? Could it be that something happened in heaven? Muronyu was extremely shocked. At the same time, he was filled with killing intent towards those honorable saints. He spent many years to create the grand unification of the holy world, and it was actually broken in a day. The most important thing was that these honorable saints affected the increase of his power of faith. Damn it! Muronyu's eyes flickered with cold light, and his killing intent soared. Chapter 1788. Even the Supremes had returned. Muronyu naturally didn't have a good impression of these saints who had messed up the holy world. He was even filled with killing intent. However, Muronyu didn't leave the desolate God's secret realm and head to the holy world to kill those Supremes. Why? Muronyu knew his own limits. At best, he could only kill a 1-star Supreme Being or even a 2-star Supreme Being. However, he was powerless once his strength reached the level of a 3-star Supremes. Although there were only slightly more than 1,000 Supremes in the holy world, most of them were low-star Supremes. However, it didn't mean that there weren't any high-star supremes. There were definitely 9-star supremes. You didn't even know if those so-called titled supremes were 9-star supremes or existences beyond 9-star supremes. With his current strength, once he encountered a high-star supremes, he wouldn't even have a chance to escape. He wasn't that stupid, and the desolate God's secret realm seemed to be able to continue increasing his strength. He might as well increase his strength here first, and then go out to kill those supremes and dominators. Battle. Refine. You began to repeat this monotonous and boring scene. However, it wasn't that he didn't encounter any dangers and gains in the battle. There were even times when he was chased by dozens or even hundreds of desolates that had reached the supreme being level. In the end, he still relied on Hichu Luo Shu, the power of faith and soul power, to escape the pursuit of these supremes. All this time, Yu had been killing desolates who had the strength of a 1-star sovereign. Occasionally, he would sneak attack desolates who had the strength of a 2-star sovereign. But once, when he was ambushing a 2-star Supreme Master Desolation, he didn't know that there was a 4-star Supreme Master Desolation nearby. Yu successfully killed the 2-star Supremes, but he was almost killed by the 4-star Supremes. Even when Yu unleashed the power of faith and soul power, he still couldn't kill it. In the end, he used the weapon fragment and wasted a large amount of the Holy World's origin energy to kill it. Although it was a close call in the end, Yu was scared half to death. Therefore, Yu became even more careful in the following days. After a series of battles, Yu's combat experience had become richer and richer. At the same time, the combination of faith power, soul power, and physical strength became more and more proficient, and the power became even more powerful. Huang was a 1-star supreme being. Huang, a 2-star supreme martial artist. When Yu was moving unhindered in the territory of the 3-star desolates, his strength once again broke through. He had risen from the 6th level to the 7th level of the primal Chaos Ancestor Saint. His ranking on the Saint rankings immediately shot up to 30,000th place. And Yu's true battle prowess was already enough to sweep away all 3-star Supremes. Right now, regardless of whether it was the 3-star Supreme level Desolation or 3-star Supreme, they were already not his match. However, Yu's strength could only be considered as a low-level existence among the Supremes. In fact, he wasn't even considered an intermediate one. Moreover, Yu had been in the desolate God's secret land for more than 1,000 years. In the past 1,000 years or so, he had already lost count of how many supreme-level desolates he had killed and refined. Right now, as long as he saw a desolation, he felt like vomiting. However, Yu finally knew how many desolates there were in the outer region. Although he had killed thousands of desolates in the past 1,000 years, not only did he not see any desolates in the desolate God's secret land, but there were even more of them. After all, this place was directly connected to the outer region. Moreover, he had stayed here for more than 1,000 years and killed a large number of desolates. His body was covered with the aura of desolates and a strong murderous aura. This made him often detected by desolates before he could even get close to them. Should I continue or leave first? Yu muttered to himself. He really didn't want to continue killing and refining desolates. He was about to vomit from all the killing. But his current strength was not enough. At least when he was comparable to a 9-star Supreme, his strength would be considered decent. Now, his strength was still too weak. You have to continue, and it's best if you go deep into the desolate God's secret land. Just when Yu was about to make a decision to leave the desolate God's secret land, the slightly old voice of the Holy World's origin rang in his mind. Old Holy World, did you find something? Yu was shocked. Usually, the Holy World's origin rarely spoke. Even when Yu looked for him, he didn't like to talk, let alone take the initiative to speak. That was why Yu was so shocked. If I'm not wrong, there might be another Holy World's origin in the depths of the desolate God's secret land. The Holy World's origin's voice continued to ring in Yu's mind. It was faint. However, it made Yu instantly excited. Holy World's origin. Morongyu couldn't help but be excited. He knew what the holy world's origin meant. Now, he had only refined 1/9 of the holy world's origin. However, after refining the holy world's origin, his strength would increase by several times. If he refined more of the holy world's origin, his strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Moreover, the more holy world's origin he refined, the more confident he would be in fighting against heaven. Are you sure? Morongyu was excited. He no longer felt disgusted by the desolate god. If there really was a holy world's origin, no matter how dangerous the desolate god's secret land was, he would have to give it a try. I'm sure. However, the origin is very weak. Maybe it's sealed. The holy world's origin said faintly. It's good that you're sure. Morongyu laughed in his heart. He had already taken a step forward. Then, his body swayed and disappeared from the spot. Invisibility. He used the army word formula, and his body quickly shuttled through different space-time. He quickly approached the depths of the desolate god's secret land. A 4-star supreme desolate. A 5-star supreme desolate. 6 stars. 7 stars. In the end, Morongyu even saw a 9-star supreme desolate. Of course, with Morongyu's strength, he couldn't differentiate the realms of these desolates. Everything was told to him by the holy world's origin. There were also quite a number of 9-star desolates. These desolates were just sitting on the ground. The invisible aura they emitted made Morongyu feel suffocated. At this moment, Morongyu had already used the holy world's origin power. Otherwise, with his strength, he wouldn't be able to get within 100 million miles of these 9-star supreme desolates. Hiding in the void, Morongyu secretly wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. These 9-star supreme desolates were too terrifying. Not to mention attacking, even a sneeze could kill him. It was precisely because of this that Morongyu yearned for his strength to grow even stronger. At the same time, Morongyu became more and more curious about the so-called extraterrestrial. How many terrifying desolates and ferocious beasts were there? Along the way, Morongyu had seen hundreds of 9-star supreme desolates. This number definitely exceeded the number of 9-star supreme desolates in the holy world, and it was far more. Most importantly, this was only the desolate god's secret realm. In the extraterrestrial, there were even more desolates. Then, how did the supreme desolates of the holy world resist the invasion of desolates? One had to know that these desolates loved to devour civilizations. Old Saint, are you sure that the other part of the holy world's origin is in the depths of the desolate god's secret realm? Morongyu asked the holy world's origin with a bitter voice. It had taken Morongyu a few hundred years to get here. There was no other way. Even with the protection of the holy world's origin power, he had to be careful. It's definitely deeper, the holy world's origin power said with certainty. All right, then let's continue. Morongyu rolled his eyes helplessly and continued to go deeper. It was just that he was more and more careful now. In the blink of an eye, another few hundred years had passed, and the desolate god's secret realm was still deep in the clouds. However, Morongyu and his companion had stopped. This was because the holy world's origin power clearly told Morongyu that the other part of the holy world's origin power was nearby. Therefore, Morongyu began a long search. At this moment, he did not dare to use his divine sense, and he could not move too much. Otherwise, he would be easily discovered by these ferocious desolates. When that time came, Morongyu would not even have the chance to escape. The shape of the holy world's origin power is ever-changing. It could be a saint artifact, or it could be a mountain, a rock by the side of the road, or even a blade of grass. Anything is possible. This is because I'm guessing that it has sealed itself. While searching, the holy world's origin power explained to Morongyu. Keep going forward, the holy world's origin power suddenly said. Morongyu immediately flew forward. After a while, the holy world's origin power told him to go backward. In short, it wouldn't be long before Morongyu had to change his direction. If it were not for the fact that the holy world's origin power was sincerely helping him, Morongyu would even suspect that it was toying with him. Is the holy world's origin power moving? After changing directions several hundred times, Murong Yu returned to the original direction. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Anything is possible, the holy world's origin power said indifferently. In the end, Murong Yu lost his temper. Fortunately, the holy world's origin power did not move after this time. After a long time of moving, Murong Yu finally arrived near the holy world's origin power. However, Murong Yu was completely depressed now. A desolate the size of a buffalo lay on the ground in front of him. It was playing with a black ball around the size of a disc between its claws. It was made of an unknown material. That ball should be the other part of the holy world's origin power. The holy world's origin power's voice rang out in Murong Yu's head. Murong Yu could not help but spit out. Boss, is there a need for such a huge prank? Is that ball really the holy world's origin power? It's being played with by a 9-star Supreme Desolate right now. How can I snatch it away? Murong Yu was about to vomit blood inside. You can only rely on yourself for this matter. I believe you can do it. The holy world's origin power directly cast this matter aside, which made Murong Yu vomit blood even more. F***CKU. Murong Yu finally couldn't hold himself back and cursed. Chapter 1789. Murong Yu was annoyed. If the source of the holy world was in the hands of a 4 or 5-star Supreme Desolate, Murong Yu could try to snatch it with his strength. But now it was in the hands of a 9-star Supreme Desolate. Moreover, Desolate seemed to be having a lot of fun. It was like a child's toy. If it was really a child's toy, then so be it. Children usually got tired of playing with toys in their hands and then threw them aside. That way, Murong Yu would have a chance to get the source of the holy world. But this 9-star Supreme Desolate was not a child. That thing could only be snatched by force. But Murong Yu did not dare to make a move at all. With Desolate strength, as long as Murong Yu exposed himself, he would probably be killed. Old Sage, Hichu, do you have any ideas? Murong Yu was annoyed for a while, but he could not think of any ideas. So, he asked for help from the source of the holy world and Hichu. If it was any other treasure, Murong Yu might have given up directly. But the source of the holy world was something he had to get. He could not give up. No, the source of the holy world was straightforward. He really had no idea. Hichu also shook his head. Too unreliable. Murong Yu shook his head, speechless. After entering the He-Tu and Luo Shu, Murong Yu slowly began to ponder. Even if the soul power is not enough to use the power of faith, it can't hurt this terrifying Desolate. Then it will be difficult to kill it. Using the source power to create a domain, it might be able to pose a certain threat to it in the domain. Maybe I can take the opportunity to snatch the source of the holy world. But the chances are not high. Murong Yu thought in his heart. Finally, he decided on a feasible method. Use the source of the holy world to create a domain and envelop the Desolate. At the same time, the power of faith would burst out to support the soul attack and kill the Desolate. But this was not enough. He still needed to use the power of time. It would be best to reverse time and space and send the Desolate back to the past. After finalizing this method, Murong Yu began to discuss it in every possible way. The most important thing was timing. As long as a single mishap occurred, let alone the source energy of the saint's world, even his life might be lost here. After a long time, Murong Yu felt that there were no loopholes, so he prepared to make his move. Coming out of the Hichu Luo Shu again, he slowly moved to within a certain distance of Desolate. Then, he held his breath and focused. This was a moment. When desolation was slightly distracted, Murong Yu finally made his move. The origin energy of the holy world. This time, Murong Yu no longer cared about wasting origin energy. He erupted with the greatest amount of origin energy in the saint's world. Not only that, but it also contained the power of faith. With a swoosh sound, the domain was formed. Under Murong Yu's control, this domain only had a radius of 100 million miles. This range wasn't too small, and its power was much greater than a domain with a range of 1 billion kilometers or 10 billion kilometers. The moment the domain was formed, Desolation, who had the strength of a 9-star supreme, reacted. A pair of bell-sized eyes emitted a terrifying cold light, piercing through billions of space-time and looking directly at the invisible Murong-Yu. Saint Soul Slash. Murong-Yu was neither sad nor happy. He raised his soul attack to the extreme, erupting with a portion of the power of faith. It condensed into an incomparably huge battle sword and slashed at Desolation's soul. At this moment, Murong-Yu clearly saw a hint of disdain in Desolation's eyes. At the same time, he also made his move. A claw suddenly reached out, shattering billions of space-time and grabbing the battle sword condensed from the power of the soul. Then he exerted force with his claw. With a crack, the soul battle sword was directly crushed. However, at this moment, Murong-Yu's most important attack had already arrived. Reverse space-time. The power of time was silent. Before Desolation could react, it had already enveloped him. Reverse space-time returned to the past. Murong-Yu roared in his heart. However, what shocked him was that Desolation was still standing on the same spot without moving. In fact, Desolation even looked at Murong-Yu with a mocking expression. "It's over." This word instantly appeared in Murong-Yu's mind. Even the power of time can't do anything to this guy. This guy is really too powerful. After this thought flashed through his mind, his figure swayed and he retreated rapidly. He crashed into the Hichu Luo Shu and was about to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. However, although he was fast, the 9-star Supreme Desolation speed was even faster. Boom! An incomparably huge claw with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth slammed down from the sky. Then, it directly slammed onto Murong-Yu's head. At this moment, Murong-Yu only heard a crack sound. Then he saw his entire body and soul being shattered into dust. Then, his vision turned black and he lost consciousness. Roar! Seeing that it had slapped Murong-Yu to death, Desolation couldn't help but raise its head and roar in a low voice. Then, it continued to slap down and play with the source of the holy world. It was as if slapping Murong-Yu to death was nothing to it. Dragon Clan World. Dragon Murong, who had already controlled the Dragon Clan, was Murong-Yu's clone. When Murong-Yu was slapped to death, he suddenly opened his eyes. The original body actually died. However, Dragon Murong was only surprised for a moment. He wasn't angry, nor was he sad, because he knew that even if the original body died, there was still a chance of resurrection. After all, he wasn't really dead. On the other side, Zhao Jiqing and the others in the immemorial world didn't know that Murong-Yu was already dead. Because he wasn't completely dead, Murong-Yu's soul jade slip didn't change much after he died. Moreover, even if they knew that Murong-Yu had died, they wouldn't be too worried like Dragon Murong. Time passed. No one knew how many years had passed, or if it was just an instant. Murong-Yu, who had lost consciousness, slowly regained consciousness. Is this the state of the Phoenix's nirvana, between death and immortality? Murong-Yu muttered to himself. At this moment, his state was very strange. He was like a speck of dust scattered between heaven and earth, as numerous as the sand in the Ganges River. His flesh, bones, strength, faith power, and even soul power were the same. They floated between heaven and earth. However, these particles scattered between heaven and earth were directly under Murong-Yu's control. As long as he wanted, with just a thought, these particles could reassemble into his body, exactly the same as before. So this is what death feels like. It's just darkness, there's no pain. Murong-Yu thought to himself, but he didn't revive immediately, because he discovered that the particles of his physical body could always survive between heaven and earth. Of course, there would be some losses, but the speed of loss was extremely slow, almost negligible. Unless he didn't revive for tens of thousands of years, he might never be able to revive. At this time, Murong-Yu finally knew how Feng Tsang-Qiong and the others controlled the time of revival. It was that simple. Murong-Yu's gaze turned towards the terrifying desolate that had killed him. This guy was still playing with the ball formed by the source of the holy world. However, when Moronyu looked at him, he also looked over as if he sensed something. In fact, Moronyu could even feel his enormous divine sense sweeping back and forth a few times. However, Moronyu's state was very strange now. Even a 9-star Supreme couldn't discover it. The difference in strength is too great. It's impossible to seize the source of the holy world. Moronyu felt extremely bitter in his heart. This time, he wasted an opportunity for nothing. And if he continued, the result would still be the same. They would all die. Anyway, this guy can't see me in this state. Why don't I just snatch his source of the holy world when I revive and then escape? A crazy idea suddenly appeared in Moronyu's heart. After thinking about it, he brought him to Desolation's side in the state of millions of powder and even enveloped Desolation. Although Desolation felt that someone was spying on him, he didn't discover anything. After a long time, Desolation didn't care anymore. Although its strength wasn't the top in the desolate God's secret realm, it was definitely an existence of the highest level. How many people could be its opponent? Even if someone launched a sneak attack, it had the confidence to kill them. Just like Moronyu. After reviving, I will immediately reverse time and banish myself to infinity. After snatching the source of the holy world, I will immediately escape. If I don't succeed this time, then forget it. Relying on the fact that he still had at least 2 chances to revive, Moronyu immediately went crazy in his heart. Desolation was still the same as before. The ball formed by the source of the holy world was constantly being tossed around by his hands. He was having a lot of fun. During this process, the crazy Moronyu also made his move again. The moment the ball was tossed up, Moronyu roared in his heart, "Revive!" Then, in less than 1/100th of a second, he was revived. With his swoosh, Moronyu reached out his big hand and grabbed the ball. And when he made his move, he had already enveloped himself with the endless power of time. And he even banished himself to infinity. Roar! Desolation, who had the strength of a 9-star Supreme, reacted immediately. Immediately, he let out a loud roar. A terrifying sound wave directly rushed out. Rumble, poor Moronyu's power of time couldn't even reverse time and send him back to the past before it was shattered by the sound wave. At the same time, Moronyu's physical body was also shattered inch by inch. He was about to be roared into pieces. At this moment, Desolation also made his move. He grabbed at Moronyu with his claws. It's over. Am I going to die again? Moronyu's heart was instantly filled with bitterness. He had died twice in a row. No one in this world was more miserable than him, right? In fact, those who could only die once were even more miserable, because they couldn't revive, but Moronyu could. Seeing that Moronyu's physical body and soul were about to be shattered at this moment, Moronyu's vision suddenly turned black. Chapter 1790. Died again. Moronyu was depressed. He thought he had been killed again. However, he quickly came to his senses. He was still conscious, but his vision turned black. At this moment, Moronyu's eyes had regained their light. At the same time, a familiar aura came from afar. It was ancient and vicissitudes of life. This was the primordial battlefield. Moronyu was the first to realize where he had appeared. After being resurrected, Moronyu used 2 moves, reverse space-time and infinite banishment. However, the power of time was directly shattered by Desolation, and he could not reverse space-time. Fortunately, infinite banishment successfully banished Moronyu. Rumble. After Moronyu appeared in the primordial battlefield, before he could stand firm, the void behind him collapsed. Following that, a gigantic claw tore through the sky and grabbed at him at lightning speed. Moronyu was shocked, and he wanted to rush into the Hichu Luo Shu, because he knew that the owner of the claw was Desolation, which had reached the level of a 9-star Supreme. However, Moronyu did not have time to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. 2 enormous hands appeared out of thin air in front of him. 2 large hands tore through the void and slammed into Desolation's claws in a split second. Boom! After a deafening explosion, Desolation's claws and two giant hands were shattered, shattering the sky for billions of miles around. Murong Yu was stunned, and a look of confusion flashed across his face. Desolation was extremely powerful, and the ones who attacked should be Grandmaster and Grand Marshal. These two were at most one-star supreme, so how could they be a match for Desolation? But soon, Murong Yu understood. There was no other reason, but this was the primordial world. Although Desolation was powerful, it did not have much power after shattering billions of space-time and entering the primordial world. That was why he couldn't withstand a single blow. After figuring this out, Murong Yu calmed down. He did not continue to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Instead, he restored his physical body and stood where he was. Sure enough, after an instant, two figures appeared in his line of sight. They were two of the three masters of the ancient battlefield, Grandmaster and Grand Marshal. Their youngest, Tai Ching, had already been killed by Murong Yu. Murong Yu, it's actually you. When they saw Murong Yu, Tai Zhu and Tai Wu were shocked. But very quickly, they gnashed their teeth and glared at Murong Yu with resentment on their faces. It's been a long time. Murong Yu smiled as he looked at the Grandmaster and Grand Marshal. Previously, he had been ambushed by the Grandmaster and the others in the Forbidden Soul Water Domain, but Murong Yu had not caused any trouble for them. This was because he knew his own strength. If these two fellows were determined to escape, Murong Yu might not be able to kill them in a single blow. Now, Tai Zhu and Tai Wu, who were only one-star supremes, were no longer in Murong Yu's eyes. Since this battle had come, Murong Yu did not plan to leave. He would kill them first. Otherwise, they would go to the Saint's world to cause trouble again. In reality, what Murong Yu did not know was that Tai Zhu and Tai Wu did not dare to return to the Saint's world. The reason why they had returned was entirely because of Tai Ching. But now there were so many Supremes in the Saint world. Any two-star Supremes could kill them. Therefore, for their lives, they did not plan to return to the Saint's world. But Murong Yu had actually appeared in the ancient battlefield. Was he not sending himself to take revenge for them? Kill! The two brothers looked at each other and then roared at the same time. They unleashed their strongest attacks at Murong Yu. Murong Yu shook his head. His eyes were filled with mockery. Did these two fellows think he was still the same as before? Swish! Murong Yu attacked as well. He did not seem to have done anything, but he struck out with his palm. It directly enveloped Tai Zhu and Tai Wu. Then he struck down gently. Bang! Bang! Murong Yu was extremely fast. He arrived first. Before Tai Zhu and Tai Wu's attacks could reach Murong Yu's attacks had already landed on them. After two extremely loud thuds, Tai Zhu and Tai Wu looked at Murong Yu in disbelief. Their physical bodies had already been sent flying. What's going on? Murong Yu is only a rank 7 Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage. How can his attack be so powerful? The Grand Master and Grand Marshal were instantly thrown into disarray. They couldn't understand what was going on even if they were beaten to death. In fact, although Murong Yu's cultivation had yet to break through to the sovereign realm, his strength was comparable to a one-star sovereign. Moreover, Murong Yu had mixed in a little bit of faith power. Hence, Tai Zhu and Tai Wu were in for a tragedy. Submit or die. Murong Yu took a step forward and appeared on top of the Grand Master and Grand Marshal. Then, he stomped both of them to the ground. Both Tai Zhu and Tai Wu were incomparably furious and humiliated. Two sovereign experts like them had been knocked down by a rank 7 chaotic ancestor saint. Now, they were being stomped under his feet. How could they endure this? They wanted to resist, but their powers had been sealed by Murong Yu. Moreover, their souls had been wrapped up by Murong Yu's extremely violent soul power. They didn't doubt that Murong Yu's spiritual force would instantly tear their souls to shreds if they dared to utter a single word of no. They had seen Murong Yu's decisiveness with their own eyes. However, did he want them to submit? A sovereign submitting to a chaotic ancestor saint? If this matter were to spread, they would definitely be laughed at by countless people. I'll give you 10 breaths of time. After 10 breaths, if you still haven't made your choice, I'll make the choice for you. Morong's cold voice rang in their ears. Tai Zhu and Tai Wu could not help but shiver. They knew that Morong was going to kill them when he said that he would make the choice for them. Big brother, what should we do? Do we submit? Tai Wu and Tai Zhu asked telepathically. Although they had lost their powers, they still had a special method to send telepathic messages. Tai Zhu did not say anything. He only remained silent. Tai Wu was anxious. Big brother, we're confined to the primordial battlefield anyway. We can only leave if we can break through to the sovereign realm. However, with our talent, a 1-star sovereign is probably our limit. Are we going to be trapped here for the rest of our lives? Even if we return to the holy world, we'll be hated by everyone. Tai Wu was still very unhappy, because they were different from ordinary sovereigns. They were primordial resentful spirits from the primordial battlefield. They liked to devour souls. Therefore, they were not tolerated by the other sovereigns. They did not even know how they had angered the sovereign. Back then, the sovereign had strictly ordered them not to leave the primordial battlefield. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. Whether it was sovereigns or sovereigns, they were not people that Tai Zhu and his brothers could resist. Therefore, they could only live in the primordial battlefield sullenly. Fortunately, other than the sovereign, it was not easy for other sovereigns to enter the primordial battlefield. Otherwise, they would have been killed by those sovereigns who did not like them. Morong was also puzzled by this. Although these two fellows were resentful spirits, why could the other sovereigns not tolerate them? Was it because they liked to devour souls? In reality, what Morong did not know was that the 3 Tai Zhu brothers were definitely not kind people. Back when they became sovereigns, the 3 brothers had madly devoured souls to increase their strength. At first, it was the souls of saints. Later, they started to fight for the souls of sovereigns. In the beginning, they relied on their despicable methods and strength to kill many sovereigns. There were not many sovereigns in the holy world. After they killed many, they finally angered all the sovereigns in the holy world. In the end, everyone joined forces to hunt them down and almost killed them. In the end, Tai Zhu and his brothers hid in the primordial battlefield. Only then did they avoid death. However, they did not dare to appear in the holy world or the outer realm, because once they appeared, even those titled sovereigns would kill them. Moreover, every sovereign had the power of a sovereign. After they killed so many sovereigns, it would be strange if the sovereign was not furious. If not for the fact that they were sovereigns, the sovereign would have killed them. They were like rats on the street, hated by everyone. Submit. Morong is a chaotic celestial. If he doesn't die, he will eventually surpass the sovereign level. When that time comes, our status will also rise. Do we still need to fear them? Because it was a voice transmission, it was only a communication through divine sense. Although they spoke a lot, only 3 to 5 breaths of time had passed. There was still half of Morong's 10 breaths of time left. We are willing to submit. Before the 10 breaths of time was up, Tai Zhu and Tai Wu finally made their choice. Submit. Morong was a little surprised by this. However, after thinking about it, he understood. Although Tai Zhu, Tai Wu, and Tai Ching called themselves brothers, they were not blood brothers. In this cruel world, many people viewed family and friendship as extremely indifferent. This was especially true for those who were stronger. Betrayal of brothers and friends was a daily occurrence. When their lives were in danger, it was normal for the Grand Master and Grand Marshal to give up on avenging Grand Qing in order to save their own lives. I'm worried about you. Morong took a step back, no longer stepping on them. You can control our souls. At the same time, the Grand Master and the Grand Marshal completely opened up their spiritual space without any resistance. Morong didn't hold back and immediately took control of their souls. At this point, Morong had 2 more sovereigns as slaves. Shenzhen also had 2 more sovereigns. Including Morong, Shenzhen now had 5 sovereigns. Chapter 1791. The Grand Master and Grand Marshal were the overlords of the ancient battlefield, and were very familiar with it. After Morong Yu took control of their souls, he checked their memories of the ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield had a large amount of treasures. However, although those treasures were precious, they were not enough to tempt Morong Yu. Hence, Morong Yu found a quiet place and entered the Hichu Luo Shu. As for that 9-star supreme desolation, Morong Yu did not care at all. It was impossible for him to enter the ancient battlefield. If it was so easy to enter the ancient battlefield, the Grand Master and his 2 brothers would have been killed by the other Supremes. Moreover, if they entered the ancient battlefield, he could directly teleport away. Now, the most important thing for Morong Yu was to refine the second portion of the Holy World's origin source. At this moment, Morong Yu had already accelerated the time in the Hichu Luo Shu to the limit. Only an instant passed in the Holy World outside, but who knew how many years had passed in here? The ball was not big, and it was dark and swarthy like a rock. Even when Morong Yu held it in his hand, he could not sense any holy origin source. It was hidden too well. Morong Yu tried to communicate with it, but there was no response. If not for the fact that he had already refined 1/9 of the holy origin source, which told Morong Yu that this ball was the Holy World's origin source, he would have thrown it away long ago. Old sage, this is a portion of you. I'll leave it to you now. Morong Yu tried many methods, but none of them worked. In the end, he handed the ball to the old sage. The old sage, which was the name that Morong Yu gave to the Holy World's origin source. Swish! A small old man suddenly disappeared in front of Morong Yu. This should be the Holy World's origin source. This was also the first time Morong Yu saw the Holy World's origin source in this form. Leave it to me, old sage said. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed the ball. Then the old sage sat down cross-legged and waved his hands, sending one seal after another into the ball. It should have sealed itself. Once it entered a deep slumber, most people would not be able to wake it up. Only by using a special method can you communicate with it. The old saint explained to Morong Yu during this process. Morong Yu rolled his eyes. This old sage was also the type of person who would take advantage of others. He already knew this would happen, but he still watched as Morong Yu tried all sorts of methods to awaken the source energy of the saint's world. Was this guy here to watch the monkey perform? However, even though Morong Yu was secretly cursing in his heart, he didn't show it, nor did he disturb the old saint. Instead, he sat down cross-legged next to him. Just now, he was hovering between life and death, which allowed him to gain another level of understanding towards cultivation. Now, he had to seize this opportunity to comprehend it in order to increase his strength. As for the old sage, he was still trying to awaken the other part of the Holy World's origin source. After an unknown amount of time, Morong Yu, who was in the middle of cultivation, was awakened by the old sage's somewhat hurried voice. Morong Yu, quickly refine it. Chapter 1792. Morong Yu was jolted awake from his cultivation. Opening his eyes, he saw the ball in the old sage's hand shatter with a bang. Then it turned into a ball of black origin energy. Without saying a word, Morong Yu sent out his immense spirit consciousness and soul power, enveloping the black origin energy. Boom! However, before Morong Yu could refine it, the origin energy had already exploded. Instantly, an incomparably huge wave of energy enveloped the entire Hichu Luo Shu. In fact, the origin energy was like a ferocious beast that was about to devour Morong Yu, wanting to devour Morong Yu whole. Morong Yu, even though this holy world is 90% of my body, it's not willing to fuse with me right now. So, you should refine it directly. I'll assist you. As the old sage spoke, he had already unleashed his origin energy, suppressing it directly. Morong Yu was a little speechless. This scene was just like him fighting with his clone. His clone was also separated from his soul. In reality, they were a single entity. Even though the holy world was 90% of its body, they still had the same consciousness. But they had definitely become 9 independent entities. Naturally, The consciousness of the holy world was unwilling to be refined by Murong Yu, because once it was refined, it would be devoured by the old sage. In the future, there would only be the old sage and not him, fighting as equals. 90% of the holy world's origin energy was about the same in terms of strength. Therefore, after the old sage and Murong Yu unleashed their powers, the two of them were in a stalemate. Neither could do anything to the other. But there was still Murong Yu on the old sage's side. For the sake of obtaining more of the holy world's origin energy, Murong Yu could not care less about holding back. Therefore, his soul power, power of faith, and other things all burst out. With the help of the old sage, he refined the other part of the holy world's origin energy. Murong Yu, help me refine the old sage, and I can help you find the third source of the holy world. Don't be deceived by that shameless old bastard. At this time, a somewhat old voice sounded in Murong Yu's ears. His voice was exactly the same as the old sage's, but the tone and pitch of his voice were somewhat different. This should be the voice of the second source of the holy world. I'm sure old sage has already told you about me. Submit to me. Even though you've been devoured by the old sage, your consciousness still exists. It's just that the old sage is controlling it. Didn't you all do the same in the past? The second sacred world origin immediately roared. How can it be the same? In the past, there was only one consciousness. Now, there are 9. Why should old saint be the one to lead and not me? It's impossible for old sage to control me. Murong Yu frowned, but said nothing more. Instead, he continued to work with the old sage. Of course, Murong Yu wouldn't believe his words. Back then, the old sage had voluntarily submitted to him, and they'd worked well together all this time. As for the second source of the holy world origin, who knew what he'd become? What if he turned bad? That wouldn't benefit Murong Yu at all. Besides, Murong Yu's brain hadn't been fried. Was there a need to give up on old sage and choose him? The second source of the holy world origin was furious that Murong Yu didn't listen to his advice. But because the old sage was holding him back, he couldn't escape, nor could he hurt Murong Yu. Murong Yu, on the other hand, was still calmly refining the energy. Finally, after 100 eras, the second source of the holy world origin's roars gradually weakened. In the end, it disappeared without a trace. On this day, Murong Yu suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, an incomparably powerful aura erupted from his body. Boom! Crack! He'd broken through not long ago, but at this moment he broke through again, reaching the 8th level of the primal chaos ancestor sage. His 9 syllables mantra, other battle skills, and so on had all improved to varying degrees. The current Murong Yu was capable of contending against a 4-star sovereign with his own strength. If he added soul power, faith power, and the holy world origins power, he was even confident that he could kill a 5-star supreme. Even if he faced a 6-star supreme, Murong Yu was confident that he could fight. If he used the weapon fragment, Murong Yu wasn't sure if he could hurt a 7-star supreme. It was because of this lack of confidence that Murong Yu didn't use the weapon fragment when he faced the 9-star supreme desolation. Because if it didn't work, the weapon fragment might be taken away by desolation. It hadn't been refined, so it was basically impossible to take it back after it was taken away. But the most important thing was that Murong Yu had refined 2/9 of the holy world origin's power. Although it was only half compared to the 4/9 of the sovereign's power, he was still a big step away from the sovereign. I finally refined it. Murong Yu heaved a long sigh of relief. During this process, the second holy world origin's power had threatened and tempted him, promising him all kinds of benefits. But Murong Yu still didn't waver in his desire to refine it. Why was that? This was because once Murong Yu refined it, everything it promised would belong to him. After all, Murong Yu didn't kill it. He only refined its consciousness and fused it with the old sage. Old sage, did you sense any other holy world origin's power? Murong Yu asked after stabilizing his cultivation. The old sage shook his head. Murong Yu gritted his teeth. Fortunately, I didn't listen to that guy's words. He's just spouting nonsense. Quick, take a look at his memories. Did he discover anything that contained great power? Moroniu asked again. But soon, the old sage shook his head again. The old sage knew that Moroniu was very concerned about this, so he immediately searched through his memories. But unfortunately, there really was nothing. Moroniu was a little disappointed, but he quickly regained his composure. His current strength was already strong enough. What did it mean to be on par with a 4 or 5-star Supreme? In other words, his current strength was already above average among Supremes. And as long as he stepped into the Supreme realm, his strength would be comparable to a 9-star Supreme's. It was even possible for him to reach the level of a titled Supreme. However, becoming a Supreme wasn't his final goal. Even becoming a Sovereign wasn't his goal. Supremes and Sovereigns were just stepping stones for him to become a primal chaos controller. The main thing is that no one can threaten me unless they're at least 7-star Supreme. And there probably aren't many 7-star Supreme in the entire Holy World, right? It's time to go back to the Holy World and reorganize. These damn Supremes ruin my plans. Even death can't wipe out their crimes. Moroniu sneered in his heart. He immediately left the primordial battlefield with the Grand Master and Grand Marshal, directly teleporting back to the primordial world. In the primordial world, there was no other power apart from Shenzhen. On the other hand, Glory Sect had been having a hard time all these years. Chapter 1793. The immemorial world existed in the depths of the primal chaos. It was in the sacred world, but it was also independent of the sacred world. It had never come into contact with the sacred world. Back then, the rulers of the 6 sacred grounds only found out about the existence of the immemorial world by accident. Other than them and Moroniu, no one else knew where the entrance to the immemorial world was. Hence, although everyone in the sacred world knew that Shenzhen was in the immemorial world, and those Supremes wanted to kill their way into the immemorial world to suppress Shenzhen. However, no one knew how to enter the immemorial world. This was because everyone who knew about the entrance to the immemorial world was controlled by Moroniu. Other than Lin Guiyun, everyone else was controlled. Lin Guiyun had a good relationship with Moroniu, so there was no need for her to reveal the entrance to the immemorial world. In fact, when many Supremes found out that Lin Guiyun knew about the entrance to the immemorial world, many wanted to know about it from her. They used threats and promises. However, Lin Guiyun refused to reveal anything. In the end, some Supremes even threatened Lin Guiyun and wanted to deal with her. However, Lin Guiyun wasn't alone. She had a titled Supremes backing her, Supremes Wushuang. The despicable actions of those Supremes finally angered Supremes Wushuang. At that time, Supremes Wushuang said that whoever dared to touch Lin Guiyun would be touching her. She was one of the few titled Supremes in the sacred world. Even Supremes like Supremes Jinwu didn't dare to touch her, let alone others. Hence, Lin Guiyun was safe. No one dared to be presumptuous towards her anymore. Even so, Shenzhen didn't have a good time. Although no one could enter the immemorial world, they couldn't leave either. This didn't make them feel depressed or aggrieved. After all, the immemorial world was big enough for them to live in. However, many people were slandering Moroniu. They said that Moroniu was a coward who didn't dare to face the Supremes. They even said that he hid in the immemorial world and didn't dare to leave. In the beginning, everyone was disdainful of these rumors. However, gradually, as Moroniu disappeared for extended periods of time, there was only negative news about him in the Saints' world. As for the sculptures that Moroniu had built outside, they had long been destroyed. Aside from Shenzhen's disciples, there were very few other believers in the current Saints' world. As Shenzhen's disciples and Moroniu's followers, they naturally could not tolerate this situation. But there was nothing they could do. Therefore, they felt very aggrieved. However, Moroniu was back today. A strong return. Moroniu's return naturally made all the disciples of Shenzhen extremely excited. Moreover, this time, he had brought back 2 supreme beings. Therefore, Shenzhen's disciples became more and more excited. Immemorial World, Sacred Palace. After listening to everyone's narration, Moroniu could not help but frown even though he had already guessed the severity of the matter. In the current Saint's world, aside from Supreme Being Peerless and Peerless Palace, all the other Supreme Beings were clamoring to kill Murongyu. Most importantly, these Supreme Beings had used their great abilities to distort the minds of Murongyu's followers. They had made them stop believing in Murongyu and turn to believe in them. Murongyu did not know if these people had already produced the power of faith. This was a serious problem. Once others produced the power of faith, Murongyu's trump card would no longer be a mystery. Sacred Master, Supreme Jinwu is one of the most arrogant Supreme Beings. He has publicly said that he wants to kill you more than once. A higher-up of Shangzhen's walked out and looked at Murongyu worriedly. The others were the same. Now that a Supreme Being had appeared, they finally knew that there were more than 10 Supreme Beings in the Saint's world. However, they also knew that Supreme Jinwu and the others were the most terrifying. Although Murongyu was powerful, he was definitely not their match. Therefore, they wanted Murongyu not to go out. No matter how powerful Supreme Jinwu was, he could not enter the immemorial world. As long as Murongyu cultivated here and his strength reached a certain level, Supreme Jinwu and the others would not be Murongyu's match. Supreme Jinwu, huh? Murongyu's eyes flashed with a cold light before he sneered. In terms of strength, he was indeed not Supreme Jinwu's match. However, it would not be easy for Supreme Jinwu to kill him. Other than Supreme Jinwu, who else is the most arrogant? Give me a list of the people who are the most arrogant. Murongyu sneered as his killing intent surged. Hearing this, everyone present was shocked. Holy Lord, what are you doing? You have to think twice. Someone immediately exclaimed. Zhao Jiqing and the others also looked at Murongyu with worried eyes. No need to worry. Don't they want to kill me? I want to see if they kill me or I kill them. They're just Supreme Beings. I know what I'm doing. Everyone was helpless. They all understood Murongyu's character, so they did not try to persuade him. They only handed the list to Murongyu. Murongyu glanced at it and already had a plan in his mind. Other than Supreme Jinwu, there was another Supreme Being in the human world who was also arrogant. That was Supreme Cloud Piercing. Supreme Cloud Piercing was one of the seniors on Cloud Piercing Island. His strength was not bad. Among the Supreme Beings on Cloud Piercing Island, his strength was the highest. He was a 6-star Supreme Being. In fact, among the 10 people who were the most arrogant, Supreme Cloud Piercing was the weakest. Therefore, he was naturally chosen by Murongyu as his target. It's Cloud Piercing. Send out the battle plan immediately. 3 days later, we'll challenge Cloud Piercing in the sky above Big Dipper Mountain. After Murongyu decided, he immediately sent Zhang Ao to handle this matter. With my current strength, killing a 5-star Supreme Being shouldn't be a problem. If I use that weapon fragment, it's definitely possible to kill a 6-star Supreme Being instantly. Now that I've refined 2/9 of the Holy World's origin, the origin energy will allow me to use the weapon fragment more often, Murongyu muttered to himself. Chapter 1794. Soon, the news of Murongyu challenging the Cloudbreaker Supreme spread throughout the Holy World. This time, it was the same as when Murongyu challenged Yao Tian. The Holy World was filled with disdainful laughter. Murongyu was powerful, but the Cloudbreaker Supreme was a 6-star Supreme. He was on a completely different level from Yao Tian. How could Murongyu be his match? Many people had even concluded that Murongyu was dead for sure. However, even more people were rushing towards the Big Dipper Mountain. Those below the Supreme level were there to watch the show. The Supreme level experts were preparing to snatch Murongyu's corpse. They were certain that Murongyu would die. Lord Supreme, this Murongyu is a peerless genius of our human race. He has contributed greatly to the human race and has treated our unparalleled palace well. Can't you lend a hand? Don't let him die. Within the unparalleled palace, Lin Guiyun stood in front of a devastatingly beautiful lady and spoke respectfully. This person was one of the strongest titled Supremes in the Holy World. Unparalleled Supremes. Unparalleled Supremes frowned. To be honest, before this, she admired Murongyu. He was brave and smart. However, She was a little dissatisfied this time. She felt that Murong Yu was too reckless. Did he think that a 6-star Supreme was the same as a 1-star Supreme? He was simply sending himself to death. However, in the end, unparalleled Supremes still flew towards the Big Dipper Mountain with Lin Guyun. Cloudbreaker's supremacy was a tall and burly man with a simple and honest look on his face. However, those who knew him well knew that he was not as simple as he looked. He was sinister and cunning. If one didn't know him well, they would be fooled by his appearance and be blasted into pieces. At this moment, this fellow was standing on a peak of Big Dipper Mountain with a gloomy expression. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Big Dipper Mountain hadn't been completely destroyed. Back then, Yao Tian and the others had only destroyed the headquarters of the Human Race Alliance. Cloudbreaker's expression was ugly. He was actually called out by Murong Yu. He was a 6-star supremacy, yet he was being challenged by a primal chaos ancestor saint. This was not an honor, but a disgrace. Being challenged by someone who was so much weaker than him. If that wasn't a humiliation, then what was? However, what comforted him a little was that Murong Yu had actually taken the initiative to appear. Once he killed Murong Yu, he wouldn't even need to fear a sovereign, let alone a titled paragon. Poyen, I heard that you were challenged by Murong Yu. Be careful not to fail miserably. Back then, Murong Yu challenged Yao Tian and killed him. A sinister voice sounded. Poyen looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a demon race supreme being looking at him with a snake-like voice. Poyen naturally recognized this fellow. He was a supreme being of the fiend race, and his true form was that of a viper. Regardless of whether it was the way he spoke or the way he behaved, he was quite sinister. Viper, do you think I'm as useless as your demon clan, Jizun? A supreme being was actually killed by a primal chaos ancestor saint. You guys are really making us supreme beings proud. Poyen sneered as he retorted. Hearing this, the faces of the demon race and sacred race supreme beings darkened. Not only had Yao Tian been killed, but the 2 sacred race supreme beings had also been killed by Murong Yu. Poyen's words seemed to be mocking the fiend race as trash, but he was actually scolding the sacred race. Hee, I want to see how strong a human supreme being is. A sacred race supreme being said unhappily. A human supreme being might not be much, but the primal chaos ancestor saint's strength is not bad. Killing supreme beings is like slaughtering chickens. A human supreme being mocked. This supreme being might not have a good impression of Murong Yu. Right now, he just wanted to use Murong Yu to trample on the sacred race and demon race. In any case, the 3 races weren't doing well in the extraterritorial region. Who wouldn't seize this opportunity to trample on the other side? The faces of the sacred race and demon race supreme beings darkened even more. They wanted to retaliate, but they didn't know how. It was a fact that Murong Yu was a human. It was also a fact that he had killed their supreme being when he was in the primal chaos ancestor saint realm. Even if Murong Yu had killed the 6-star supreme being Piyun, could they still say that the human race was trash? Since both of them were humans, they would naturally say that Murong Yu was heaven-defying, while Piyun was trash. Chapter 1795. One of the top existences in the holy world was currently engaging in a war of words like a bunch of hooligans. However, the other sages did not dare to show any abnormalities, although they were secretly laughing in their hearts. At least on the surface, they did not dare to laugh. Otherwise, if they offended a certain honorable and got slapped by him, they would die in vain. A bunch of idiots. What does my strength have to do with you? Even if I'm from the human race, what does the human race have to do with you? Just as Piyun's face darkened and he was about to roar, a voice suddenly rang out. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a black-clothed youth stepping through the void and walking over. His footsteps were calm, but every step he took would cross a distance of billions of miles. In the blink of an eye, the black-clothed youth appeared in the sky above Big Dipper Mountain. Swoosh! Countless people's gazes immediately gathered on the black-clothed youth. Who else could this black-clothed youth be but Murong Yu? Brat, you're so arrogant. All the honorables were shocked by Murong Yu's words. However, they quickly reacted, and their faces darkened. Endless killing intent filled the depths of their eyes. Among them, one of the honorables stepped out and looked at Murong Yu coldly with murderous intent. Who are you? Murong Yu fearlessly stared at the supreme being. In fact, there was even a hint of disdain in his eyes. He was obviously looking down on the honorable. Honorable Luo Wang. The honorable, who was Honorable Luo Wang, held his head high and said proudly. He had reason to be proud. After all, he was one of the 1,000 most powerful people in the holy world. Everyone below the honorable level was like an ant in his eyes. Murong Yu frowned slightly and began to search through his memories. After a while, he said indifferently, "A 4-star honorable from the Holy Clan?" Yes. Honorable Luo Wang was extremely proud. A 4-star honorable was much stronger than a 3-star honorable. Even among the honorables, he was a mid-tier existence. He was far from what an honorable like Yao Tian could compare to. Trash. However, before Luo Tian could finish being proud, Murong Yu's voice that was filled with disdain sounded out. Immediately, Luo Wang's smile froze. Then it instantly turned cold and gloomy. Ha ha! The supremes of the human clan and the demon clan burst into laughter. The supreme saint of the sacred race had been humiliated, so how could they not add insult to injury? You're looking to die? Autarch Luo Wang roared, taking a step forward and reaching out with his hand to grab Murong Yu. However, before Murong Yu could make a move, someone was faster than him. Scram! I'm Murong Yu's opponent now. Poyan roared furiously. He waved his hand and punched Luo Wang. A wisp of terror flashed through the depths of Luo Wang's eyes when he saw Piyun directly attack him. Only Supremes like them knew how huge the gap between a 4-star supremacy and a 6-star supremacy was. Therefore, Luo Wang didn't dare to fight at all and immediately retreated. After forcing Luo Wang back with a single punch, Cloudbreaker Prime's fist moved horizontally through the void, locked onto Murong Yu, and smashed towards him. Murong Yu's constitution was something that all of them coveted, so he didn't dare to delay any longer. Otherwise, if some higher-level Supremes disregarded their dignity and attacked Murong Yu, then he wouldn't be able to get anything. Moreover, he knew that Luo Wang's anger was actually an act. His goal was to kill Murong Yu and seize Murong Yu's physical body and treasures. How could Poyan let him have his way? Therefore, he chased Luo Wang away. However, he also attacked directly. He didn't want to delay any longer. A sharp light flashed through Murong Yu's eyes. He let out a low roar and raised his strength to the maximum in an instant. He also punched out. His fist was imbued with the power of faith. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two collided fiercely in the void. After an earth-shattering explosion, Murong Yu was instantly sent flying. Meanwhile, Poyan, a 6-star supremacy, only swayed slightly. The difference between the two was obvious. However, even so, Murong Yu's performance really shocked everyone nearby. Poyan was a 6-star supremacy, while Murong Yu was at most an 8th-stage chaotic ancestor saint. He could actually take Poyan's blow head-on and not die. How strong did he have to be? In other words, Murong Yu's current strength was already comparable to that of a 6-star supremacy. At least, he had the strength of a 5-star supremacy. Killing a 4-star supremacy shouldn't be a problem. Seeing Murong Yu's strength, Luo Wang couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. At this time, he actually felt grateful to Poyan who had forced him to retreat just now. If it wasn't for the Cloudbreaker Sovereign, he would have already been killed by Murong Yu. Even if he wasn't killed, just being forced to retreat by Murong Yu was enough to make him lose face. Pa pa pa, Murong Yu's body kept emitting sounds like beans being fried. If someone could see inside his body, they would definitely see that his flesh, blood, veins, and even his strength were constantly exploding. This was the power that Poyan had blasted into his body. At this time, it was violently destroying Murong Yu's body. On the surface, Murong Yu didn't seem to have suffered any injuries, but in reality, his body was already in a state of near collapse. The power of life surged wildly. At the same time, Muronyu had also poured a large amount of power of faith into his power, constantly destroying the power that Poyin had poured into his body. This was because he had already summoned the Hichu Luoshu to block the surface of his body, reducing part of Poyin's power. Otherwise, his body would have exploded directly. The strength of a 6-star Supreme is indeed terrifying. With my current cultivation and the power of faith, I only have the power to fight. Muronyu thought in his heart. He had already eliminated all of Poyin's power, and his body had also returned to its original state. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. During this process, Muronyu used the army character formula, shattered countless space-time, and quickly retreated. Poyin chased after him at an incomparably fast speed. In just a blink of an eye, they were far away from Tiangang Mountain. Muronyu, you dare to challenge me with this strength? Today, I will send you to the Western Paradise. Poyin constantly sneered at Muronyu. However, he was incomparably happy in his heart. The weaker Muronyu was, the higher the chances of him getting Muronyu's body. Therefore, he put in more effort. Is that so? Being ridiculed by Poyin, Muronyu not only didn't get angry, but also revealed a strange smile on his face. Saint Soul Slash. Chapter 1796. At this moment, Muronyu roared in his heart. Immediately, his soul force that had been raised to the extreme, containing the power of faith, transformed into an incomparably huge battle blade and slashed down at Piyun's soul. At the same time that Muronyu attacked, Piyun's soul trembled violently. An incomparably strong aura of danger directly enveloped Piyun's heart. This was a 6-star Supreme. He was too sensitive to danger. Soul attack. Cloudbreaker Prime was shocked. The aura of danger in his heart was so strong, which meant that Muronyu had the ability to threaten his life. Therefore, he immediately channeled an enormous amount of energy into his soul space to protect his soul. Slash. Muronyu controlled the soul battle blade and directly slashed down. Boom. Crack. Piyun's power was directly cut by more than half, and he couldn't block the attack of the soul battle blade at all. However, Piyun wasn't just passively defending at this time. He erupted with an incomparably violent power, and under his control, it directly devoured the soul battle blade like an ancient, fierce beast. Rumble! A series of violent, muffled sounds continuously rang out. At the same time, the void around Piyun was constantly shattering and annihilating. Piyun's method was extremely effective. In a flash, Muronyu's soul battle blade had already worn away part of its power. It couldn't continue to threaten Piyun's soul. However, did Muronyu only have one soul battle blade? Saint Soul Slash. Saint Soul Slash. In the blink of an eye, Muronyu had destroyed at least 100,000 attacks. In other words, the 100,000 soul blades were constantly attacking Piyun. Piyun was on the verge of death as he roared continuously. Domain. Seeing that he couldn't kill Piyun in a short period of time, Muronyu became ruthless and directly used the origin power of the Holy World to form a domain with a radius of 10,000 miles, enveloping Piyun's entire body. At this moment, Piyun felt an incomparably powerful force rapidly squeezing him from all directions, and his power was constantly being squeezed down. Piyun even appeared to be in a difficult situation. If this continued, he would definitely die. Piyun also knew that the current situation was critical. He had never thought that Muronyu would actually have so many means and strength. However, he was a 6-star Supreme Being after all. How could he be killed so easily? Boom! A brilliant and dazzling 5-colored holy light suddenly erupted from Poyin's body. Immediately, a terrifying aura that was not inferior to Piyun's was emitted from the 5-colored holy light and instantly swept in all directions. A supreme weapon. Before anyone could even clearly see what Piyun's sovereign weapon was, the sovereign weapon already carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it shot towards Muronyu, wanting to kill Muronyu. At this moment, Murong Yu's heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Murong Yu felt helpless. At this time, other than the power of time, the other most powerful battle skills had already burst out. It could be said that he had given it his all. However, he still couldn't kill Piyun or even injure him. And when Piyun took out his supreme weapon, Murong Yu's life was in danger. At this time, if there was no follow-up move, Murong Yu could only choose to escape. If this continued, he would definitely die. This was the gap between them. Everyone felt that Murong Yu would definitely escape. However, Murong Yu's next move left everyone dumbfounded. He didn't retreat, but advanced. Chapter 1797. Murong Yu must have gone mad. When they saw that Murong Yu was advancing instead of retreating, everyone thought that Murong Yu had gone mad. Murong Yu was dead for sure. None of them believed that Murong Yu had a chance of surviving. Many of them were already prepared to make their move. Lord Autark. Lin Gyun glanced at Autark, peerless from the sky, her face filled with worry. Autark, peerless, didn't say anything. She simply watched Murong Yu's battle with a frown. Based on the information she had on Murong Yu, she didn't think Murong Yu was that sort of person. Murong Yu wouldn't seek his own death. So what was Murong Yu plotting now? When this thought appeared in his mind, Sovereign Wu Shuang didn't make a move. Instead, he calmly looked at Murong Yu. However, she was already prepared to make a move. Murong Yu was one of the most outstanding talents of the human race. Whether it was because of that or because of Lin Guyu, Autark Peerless didn't want Murong Yu to be killed. In fact, she was actually looking forward to it. She was looking forward to Murong Yu becoming a primal chaos controller. Only then would Murong Yu be able to surpass sovereigns and even kill them. Even a titled Autark like her would find it hard to breathe under the pressure of a sovereign. It was time to change the structure of the holy world. Murong Yu's body must be mine. Many people were already secretly increasing their strength. As soon as Murong Yu was killed, they would make their move. Ha ha ha! Seeing Murong Yu charge at him, Autark Peerless laughed heartily in his heart. In fact, the scene of him possessing Murong Yu's body and becoming the primal chaos controller had already appeared in his mind. Murong Yu sneered inwardly when he saw Cloud Breaker Supreme smile and the expressions of the people around him. Murong Yu's speed was extremely fast. In less than a moment, he had already arrived in front of Piyun. It seemed that he was about to collide with Piyun's supreme weapon. At some point in time, a blade that couldn't be any more ordinary had appeared in Murong Yu's hand. It was the weapon fragment he'd obtained from the Forbidden Soul Water region. Kill. The distance between the two of them had been shortened. When Murong Yu felt that Piyun wouldn't be able to dodge, he finally made his move. Whoosh! Murong Yu poured a large amount of faith power into the weapon fragment in his hand. Then he threw it towards Piyun like a hidden weapon. The weapon fragment was still dim and lightless. It transformed into a palm-sized shadow that tore through space and time and appeared directly in front of Piyun. At this moment, Piyun's heart was suddenly enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. He was immediately taken aback. With a thought, the supreme artifact that was originally flying towards Murong Yu changed its direction and rapidly shot towards the black silhouette that was flying towards him. However, Murong Yu had the intention to launch a sneak attack. Moreover, the distance was so close that Piyun simply couldn't dodge or block it. With a Piyu sound, the weapon fragment had already sunk into Piyun's head. Then, a terrifying power fiercely erupted. With a pong sound, Piyun's entire head, soul, and body had already shattered. Rumble above the vault of heaven, countless blood clouds condensed, and then a downpour of blood rain poured down crazily. A 6-star supremacy had died. Piyun died just like that. The surrounding people were stunned. Each and every one of them felt that it was inconceivable. Some of the weaker supremacies couldn't even see how Piyun had died. Even Supremacy Wu Shuang, a titled supremacy, only saw a black shadow flash, and Supremacy Piyun had already died. When they wanted to take a closer look at the black shadow, it had already been caught in Murong Yu's hand and disappeared in his palm. It should have been kept by Murong Yu into the Hichu Luo Shu. Could it be related to that black shadow? What exactly is that black shadow? It actually killed a 6-star supremacy in an instant. The titled supremacies were all stunned. With a wave of his hand, Murong Yu swept the mysterious weapon fragment and supremacy Piyun's spatial treasure into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, he was about to rush into the Hichu Luo Shu and directly teleport away. However, although his movements were fast, someone else was even faster. Just as he stepped out, an extremely terrifying force, one that Murong Yu couldn't summon any will to resist, came crashing down on him. In fact, Murong Yu even saw a huge furry claw tear through the sky and come crashing down on him. This is a titled supremacy, Murong Yu exclaimed in shock. This aura was even many times stronger than that of the 9-star supremacy desolation that he had met in the desolate God's secret realm. Apart from a titled supremacy, Murong Yu really couldn't think of anyone else. Run. Without another word, Murong Yu had already raised his strength to the limit. Using the army symbol formula, he broke through the void and shot towards the distance at high speed. At this time, he didn't choose to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Not to mention that the void near the Hichu Luo Shu would be shattered by the titled supremacy's power. Murong Yu could possibly charge into the turbulent space. Even if he entered the Hichu Luo Shu, the titled supremacy's attack could follow him into the Hichu Luo Shu. At that time, Murong Yu still wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed. Domain. Chapter 1798. The Power of Time. Murong Yu used the remaining origin energy of the Holy World to set up several realms around him, weakening the power of the titled supremacy. At the same time, he reversed time and space to send the titled supremacy's power back to the past. However, the difference between the two was too great. Murong Yu's actions could not weaken the titled supremacy's power by much. However, Murong Yu still had the Hichu Luo Shu covering his body, which weakened the titled supremacy's power. However, if this continued, he would still die. Speed? Although Murong Yu's speed was terrifying, it was still inferior to the titled supremacy. The titled supremacy's power was too terrifying. They were the strongest in the holy world below the sovereigns. Could he only use the weapon fragment? Murong Yu knew that even if he used the weapon fragment, he was no match for the titled supremacy. However, he could at least block the titled supremacy's attack. However, the titled supremacy could snatch the weapon fragment away. With the titled supremacy's power, he would immediately become the strongest titled supremacy if he obtained the weapon fragment. Murong Yu did not want his enemy to become stronger, but he had no other choice. Therefore, he used the remaining origin energy of the holy world to pick up the weapon fragment and was about to attack. Song Lang, you're shameless. Just as Murong Yu was about to use the weapon fragment, a furious roar came from afar. Following that, Murong Yu saw a spotlessly white hand rapidly swatting over from afar, directly slapping the huge claw. Murong Yu didn't even have time to react before the terrifying shockwave slammed into his body. Bang! Murong Yu's body exploded. At the same time, a gentle force descended from the sky and enveloped Murong Yu in the void where Murong Yu was. Murong Yu felt very relieved when he was enveloped by the force. However, he didn't have any hindrance and immediately recovered his physical body. Only then did he see who the attacker was. Supreme Peerless. At this moment, Sovereign Peerless had already blocked Sovereign Ash Wolf's attack. It was the Ash Wolf Sovereign who had attacked Murong Yu. He was a titled supreme martial artist and was extremely powerful. Without any hesitation, Murong Yu entered the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo in a flash. Then, he teleported away. Although he wanted to kill the Ash Wolf Sovereign, he knew his limits. At this moment, how could he be Ash Wolf Sovereign's match? Although Autark Peerless had made a move, there was no way she would fight Autark Ash Wolf for Murong Yu. She was only temporarily blocking Ash Wolf Sovereign's attack to give Murong Yu a chance to escape. Furthermore, since Sovereign Grey Wolf had made a move, the other titled supremes would definitely make a move as well. If he continued to stay where he was, he would also die. Why? Supremacy Peerless might be powerful, but he couldn't possibly fend off all the other titled supremacies. Hence, Moron would only be a burden to Supremacy Peerless if he continued to stay. Supreme Peerless, Moron will definitely repay you 100-fold in the future for your kindness today. Ashwolf, one day, I will kill you with my own hands. Although Moron had left, his voice still reverberated from the endless void. It reverberated throughout the world and lingered for 3 days. Hearing this, Supremacy Peerless revealed a faint smile. He stopped attacking and stood calmly in the sky. But Ash Wolf Sovereign's face was flushed red, his eyes flashing with terrifying killing intent. He had actually been threatened by a mere primal chaos ancestor sage like Moron. This infuriated him greatly. But what made him even angrier was Moron, Supremacy Peerless. Peerless, are you trying to protect Moron? Ash Wolf Sovereign walked up to Supremacy Peerless with a belly full of anger, his killing intent soaring. So what if I'm protecting Moron? Supremacy Peerless expression didn't change in the slightest. Ash Wolf Sovereign froze. That's right, even if Supremacy Peerless was protecting Moron, what could he do to him? In terms of strength, the two of them were evenly matched. Supreme Peerless, I hope that you won't interfere in this matter. Otherwise, something bad will happen. Bloodwave Sovereign walked over slowly, looking like a man made of blood as he stared coldly at Supremacy Peerless. Supremacy Peerless smiled. Oh, what bad things? Let's hear it. Bloodwave Sovereign's eyes flashed with killing intent. Moron is someone I must kill. From today onwards, anyone who dares to stand in our way will be killed without mercy. Supremacy Peerless expression darkened. Bloodwave, I'm telling you clearly today that Moron is under my protection. Anyone who dares to touch Moron is invincible. As he spoke, Supremacy Peerless swept his cold gaze across everyone present. Apart from the titled supremacies, everyone couldn't help but lower their heads when they felt his gaze. Chapter 1799. There was a huge difference between a titled autarch and an ordinary autarch. The difference between them was like the difference between an ordinary autarch and a primal chaos ancestor sage. As a result, apart from the titled autarchs, the other autarchs didn't dare to make eye contact with autarch Wushuang. All right, Wushuang, you don't need to worry too much. Moron stole our orthodoxy and almost killed our successor. His continued existence is extremely harmful to us. He's not fit to continue living in the saint's world. While everyone lowered their heads, not daring to look at autarch Wushuang, a voice rang out and enveloped the entire area. It rang out clearly in everyone's ears. Everyone looked up and saw that the speaker was a titled autarch of a human race, autarch True Martial. Although he and Moron were both part of the human race, Moron had almost destroyed the True Martial Sacred Hall. When autarch True Martial had returned to the saint's world and learned of this, he had been furious and wanted to attack. However, he hadn't been able to find Moron. In reality, many people knew that autarch True Martial hadn't wanted to attack Moron because Moron had almost destroyed the True Martial Sacred Hall. Autarch True Martial had only coveted Moron's chaotic celestial body. Almost exterminating orthodoxies and seizing orthodoxies were all just excuses. Autarch Wushuang looked at autarch True Martial with a dark expression. True Martial, you're one of the titled autarchs. Can you not be so shameless? It's fine if you covet Moron's body, but why do you have to come up with such a clumsy excuse? I look down on you. I'm ashamed to be associated with you. Autarch True Martial's fair face instantly flushed red when he heard this. It wasn't because he was ashamed, but because he was angry. He looked coldly at autarch Wushuang, then snorted coldly and took a step forward, disappearing from where he stood. He left directly. I'd like to see how you'll protect Moron. Autarch Ash Wolf sneered and left with autarch Shuetao. As for the titled supreme martial artists of the sacred clan, they didn't say anything from the beginning to the end and had already left. Sir, are you really going to protect Morongyu? Lin Guyun looked at Supreme Peerless and asked cautiously. Although Supreme Peerless was powerful, how could he compare to Supreme True Martial and the others? Once they joined forces, Autarch Peerless would be in danger. Sovereign Peerless smiled faintly. Morongyu is so cunning that there's no way they'll be able to find him. Don't worry, Morongyu is under my protection. Lin Guyun felt relieved. It wasn't that she had fallen in love with Morongyu, nor did she have any special feelings for him. He just didn't want to see Morongyu die. This was because she felt that Morongyu was the most likely candidate for the rise of the human race. If it weren't for the return of these supreme beings, the human race would have completely risen. The holy world would have been unified, but it was a pity that these supreme beings had ruined it. However, Lin Guyun believed that since Morongyu could unify the holy world once, he could unify it a second time. With his talent and cultivation speed, as long as he had enough time, he would be able to dominate the entire holy world. When that time came, even titled supreme beings wouldn't be his match. The strength of titled supreme beings is truly terrifying. I've overestimated myself. Morongyu panted heavily in the Hichu Luo Shu, a look of lingering fear on his face. Morongyu had guessed that titled supreme beings were 9-star supremes. But reality told him that titled supreme beings were far stronger than 9-star supremes. It was because of his miscalculation that he had almost been slapped to death by Autarch Songlang. Whether it was reaction, speed, or strength, a titled supreme being wasn't someone that Morongyu could withstand at his current level. If not for supreme being Wu Shuang, he would have been slapped to death by Autarch Songlang. Even if he had taken out the mysterious weapon fragment, he might not have been able to stop Autarch Songlang. Although Morongyu still had a chance to revive, he couldn't let it go to waste like that. Even so, Morongyu's mind and soul had suffered heavy injuries. While Supreme Being Wu Shuang and Supreme Being Jinwu were confronting each other, Morongyu had already accelerated the flow of time in the Hichu Luo Shu to the maximum, spending a large amount of time to heal his injured mind and soul. Titled Supreme Beings, Morongyu frowned slightly, his face a little gloomy. These titled Supreme Beings were one of his strongest enemies right now. He could still kill a 6-star Supreme Being or 7-star Supreme Being if he took out the weapon fragment. But he couldn't kill an 8-star Supreme Being, 9-star Supreme Being, or titled Supreme Being. In other words, if these Supreme Beings were still in the Holy World, Morongyu wouldn't be able to continue unifying the Holy World. He wouldn't even be able to move freely in the Holy World. He had to increase his strength. Morongyu's eyes shone brightly. However, how could it be so easy to increase his strength? Unless he had a large amount of items that contained immense energy for him to refine, it would be difficult for him to increase his strength. It was the same for soul energy. I wonder how many titled Supreme Beings there are in the Holy World with 9-star and 8-star souls. I have to ask Supreme Being Wu Shuang when I have the chance. I also have to thank Supreme Being Wu Shuang for taking action this time. Morongyu thought to himself as he activated the Hichu Luoshu's teleportation ability and teleported towards the unparalleled palace. At this moment, the news of Morongyu challenging a 6-star Supreme Being and killing Piyun had already spread throughout the Holy World. Unsurprisingly, this action stunned countless experts in the Holy World once again. Many people whose faith had been wiped out rekindled their faith in Morongyu. Morongyu was very clear about this. This was because the power of faith that was surging into his body was gradually increasing. Although there was still a large gap from when he was at his peak, this was a good start. Moreover, after killing Piyun, those ordinary Supreme Beings didn't dare to make a fuss anymore. This was because they were worried that Morongyu would find them. Even Piyun was instantly killed, let alone them. As Supreme Beings, they knew how many Supreme Beings there were in the Holy World, and there weren't many who were stronger than Piyun. In other words, Morongyu's battle strength was above average even among Supreme Beings. Of course, Murong-Yu's strength made many people happy. These people were naturally existences like supreme being, supreme being, supreme being. The stronger Murong-Yu was, the greater the benefits they would gain after taking over his body. Swish! Murong-Yu stepped out of the Hichu Luoshu and appeared above the unparalleled palace. At this moment, the unparalleled palace was thriving. All the disciples were working hard in their cultivation. The atmosphere was pretty good. Murong-Yu, I've been waiting for you here for a long time. The moment Murong-Yu appeared, Lin Guiyun stepped on the air with a smile on her face. Murong-Yu was surprised. You knew I was coming? Lin Guiyun shook her head with a smile and explained, I didn't know you were coming, but Supreme Wushuang knew you were coming. That's why I'm here to welcome you. Supreme Peerless knew that I was coming? Murong-Yu was shocked. Could it be that Supremacy Peerless ability to predict the future was so terrifying? He came to the unparalleled palace unintentionally. Lin Guiyun only smiled and didn't say anything else. She just led Murong-Yu towards the unparalleled palace. Lin Guiyun, I really have to thank you this time. If it wasn't for you, I would have been killed by Lone Wolf. On the way, Murong-Yu suddenly said. Lin Guiyun was stunned. She turned to look at Murong-Yu and smiled. I'm just an expert on the Saint rankings. The one who helped was Supreme Peerless. You don't have to thank me. You just have to thank Supreme Peerless. Do you know that Supreme Peerless fell out with the other titled Supreme Peerless because of you? There's such a thing. Murong-Yu was shocked once again. Back when he entered the Hichu Luoshu, he directly teleported away. He didn't know there was such a thing. After a moment of shock, he smiled. Of course I have to thank Supreme Peerless. But you also have to thank me. But I'm really too poor now. I'll thank you properly in the future. Lin Guiyun rolled her eyes. The richest person in the holy world was Murong-Yu. After unifying the saints' world, who knew how many organizations had accumulated wealth over countless years. Even the supreme, peerless wealth couldn't compare to Murong-Yu's. If you really want to thank me, just give me a ruler weapon or something in the future. Lin Guiyun rolled her eyes at Murong-Yu and smiled. Murong-Yu nodded and said solemnly, I'll definitely give you a ruler weapon in the future. Seeing how serious Murong-Yu was, Lin Guiyun only smiled faintly. She didn't take it seriously. After all, there was only one ruler in this world. How could there be a supreme weapon? However, Lin Guiyun didn't expect that because of today's joke, Murong-Yu would really give her a ruler weapon. Supreme Peerless is inside. You can go in. I won't be going in. After bringing Murong-Yu to the outside of the unparalleled palace, Lin Guiyun left. Although Supreme Peerless had returned, and there were other Supreme Peerless in the unparalleled palace, the unparalleled palace was still the unparalleled palace. However, the palace master of the unparalleled palace was still Lin Guiyun. She had a lot of things to do. Murong-Yu wasn't afraid. He walked in and saw the devastatingly beautiful Supreme Peerless sitting on a main seat. Junior Murong-Yu greets Supreme Peerless. Supreme Peerless smiled faintly. Murong-Yu, when did you become so polite? According to my understanding of you, you shouldn't be such a person. Murong-Yu's expression changed. He changed from a respectful look to a smile. Then, he sat down on the chair beside her. I wonder what kind of person Supreme Peerless thinks I am? Is it true? To be honest, I prefer this kind of person. It's too tiring to act cool. Supreme Peerless was speechless. She hadn't even finished speaking, and Murong-Yu had already revealed his true nature. However, she liked this kind of straightforward person. The others were either hypocritical or pretentious, which made her feel extremely disdainful. Chapter 1800. Senior, apart from thanking you for saving me last time, I've also come to understand the situation of the Supremes of our holy world. Before long, Murong-Yu's expression became serious as he got straight to the point. What's senior? You already have the strength to kill a 6-star supremacy. Furthermore, I believe that it won't be long before your strength reaches my level. So, you should just call me Wushuang. Supremacy Wushuang didn't have the arrogance of ordinary Supremes. Or rather, she was only like this towards Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu didn't try to be pretentious. He directly called her Wushuang. Wushuang, Tell me about it. How many ordinary Supremes, 9-star Supremes, and titled Supremes are there? What's the difference? Supremacy, Wu Shuang nodded. She paused for a moment to organize her thoughts, then slowly said, there are around 2,000 Supremes in the Holy World right now. There definitely won't be more than 2,000. Among them, there are the most 1-star Supremes. There are around 500 of them. The higher the cultivation level, the fewer Supremes there are. Of course, those who can become Supremes are all top-tier geniuses of the Holy World. Although it's difficult to break through, there are still quite a few people who can break through over time. There are around 400 2-star Supremes. However, there are fewer 3-star Supremes. There are only around 300 of them. Supremacy Wu Shuang said slowly, Moron, you finally knew the number of Supremes in the Holy World. There were around 254-star Supremes. As for 5-star Supremes, there were only 200. 6-star Supremes were already experts among Supremes. Thus, there were even fewer of them. There were only 150 of them. 7-star Supremes were experts among Supremes. There were only 100 of them. But to Moron Yu's surprise, there were 58-star Supremes in the Holy World. Compared to the entire Holy World, this number wasn't even worth mentioning. But this was practically the number of peak experts in the Holy World. There were even 29-star Supremes. When Moron Yu learned of this number, he was stunned. However, he soon felt relieved. In the desolate God's secret realm, he had encountered more than 209-star Supreme Desolates. Compared to the endless outer realms, the Saints of the Saints world were still too weak. There were 10 titled Supremes, but there were only 9 titled Supremes in the Holy World. 2 from the human clan and 2 from the demon clan. On the other hand, the sacred clan had 5 titled Supremes. His strength was extremely terrifying. What's the difference between a titled Supreme Martial Artist and a 9-star Supreme Martial Artist? Moron Yu frowned and finally asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Titled Supremes are actually 9-star Supremes. However, he was much stronger than ordinary 9-star Supremes. It can even kill ordinary 9-star Supremes. Moron Yu didn't say anything. He just looked at Supreme, peerless in silence. The so-called titled Supreme Martial Artist is a Supreme Martial Artist recognized by the heavens and earth. After obtaining the recognition of the world, he would be able to use a portion of the origin energy of the Saint's world. Ordinary 9-star Supremes didn't have this ability. You know about the origin energy of the Saint's world, right? Even if it's just a little bit, it could determine the outcome of a battle. Moron Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he react. He had already refined 2/9 of the origin energy of the Saint's world. The amount of origin energy he controlled was more than peerless and the other titled Supremes. The origin energy of the Saint's world can form a domain. Think about it. If 2 people were about the same level of strength, one of them would suddenly use a domain while the other would have nothing at all. Then, the person without a domain would be suppressed immediately. He might even be killed instantly. The origin energy of the Saint's world was the difference between a titled Supreme Martial Artist and a 9-star Supremes. No wonder these 9-star Supremes had an extra trace of dignity and aura when they moved. So that was the reason. Moron Yu felt relieved. He originally thought that titled Supreme Martial Artists were much stronger than 9-star Supremes in terms of strength. However, after knowing that it was the effect of the origin energy, he calmed down. This was because the origin energy of the Saint's world was a single entity. Moron Yu had refined 2/9 of the origin energy. Once he encountered a titled Supreme Martial Artist, the origin energy of the titled Supreme Martial Artist wouldn't be able to affect Moron Yu at all. In fact, Moron Yu could even forcefully take away the other party's origin energy. Of course, a titled Supreme Martial Artist without origin energy would still be far stronger than Moron Yu. Therefore, the current Moron Yu wasn't their match at all. However, once Moron Yu had the strength to kill a 9-star Supremes, titled Supreme Martial Artist wouldn't be a concern anymore. Moron Yu believed that this day wasn't far away. The origin energy of the Saint's world was indeed terrifying. With it, not only could he deal with Supremes, he could even fight against sovereigns. When he thought of this, A smile appeared on Murong Yu's face. Seeing Murong Yu smile, Sovereign Peerless couldn't help but be stunned. Murong Yu, even titled Supreme Martial Artists are about to attack you. How can you still smile? Don't you feel pressured? Murong Yu smiled faintly. This is already the truth. Why should I give myself so much pressure? At worst, I'll just die. Peerless looked at Murong Yu speechlessly. Wasn't this guy a little too optimistic? If it were anyone else, they would have been on tenterhooks long ago. They would have been thinking about how to escape the pursuit of Sovereign True Marshal and the others. Right. I heard that you were able to return to the Saints' world this time because the Sovereign left the Saints' world and entered the Outlands? He can leave the Saints' world and enter the Outlands? Didn't you say that it's impossible to leave the Saints' world before passing the cycle of reincarnation? Murong Yu suddenly thought of this question. Sovereign Peerless didn't answer immediately. Instead, he fell silent. As for Murong Yu, he noticed that Supremacy Peerless, who had a smile on his face just a moment ago, now wore a gloomy expression. Before long, Sovereign Peerless waved her hands repeatedly. Strands of energy shot out from her hands. Murong Yu discovered that she was setting up all sorts of restrictions and formations. They seemed to be formations and restrictions that isolated auras and sound. Murong Yu's heart stirred. He secretly used the origin energy of the Saints' world to envelop the entire Peerless Palace. Even if the Sovereign personally attacked, he might not be able to discover Murong Yu and Sovereign Peerless within his domain. The difference in origin energy was so great that even Sovereign Peerless had no idea what Murong Yu was doing. Murong Yu, do you know why I chose to protect you instead of killing you like everyone else? Why did I choose to take over your body? After a long while, Sovereign Peerless finally spoke. However, what she said had nothing to do with Murong Yu's question. Murong Yu chuckled. It can't be, because I'm a man and you're a beautiful woman, right? Once you take over my body, you'll turn from a beautiful woman into a man. Sovereign Peerless glared at Murong Yu. At their level, why would they need to worry about such things? Moreover, once they took over Murong Yu's body, they'd be able to transform back into a woman with a single thought. You're a chaos celestial. Everyone thinks that once they take over your body, they'll become a chaos controller. But how could it be so easy to become a chaos controller? Aside from the pursuit of power, there's another reason. It's because of the Sovereign. Do you know what we are in the Sovereign's eyes? Murong Yu shook his head. Forget about the Sovereign. He'd only begun to interact with autarchs in recent years. Slaves. We're the Sovereign's slaves. It doesn't matter if we're ordinary saints or autarchs. We're all his slaves. Ordinary saints aren't so bad. They're too weak to be of much help to him. But us autarchs are used by him all the time. He's imprisoned us in outer space. Aside from fighting the desolates and chaos beasts, we're used to help him cultivate. Yes, you heard right. We're used to help him cultivate. He wants to use our strength to increase his own. His goal is to break through the cycle of reincarnation and roam the endless cosmos. If it weren't for the fact that he's still unable to leave the Saints' world, he definitely wouldn't care if it lived or died. When he reached this point, Sovereign Peerless was already gnashing his teeth. Traces of resentment flickered in the depths of his eyes. He'd imprison autarchs to help him cultivate. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. This heaven really was something. These autarchs, on the other hand, were far too pitiful. No wonder they were so annoyed with the Sovereign that they wanted to kill him. If it were him, he'd want to kill the Sovereign as well. This time, the Sovereign isn't actually leaving the Saints' world for outer space. He's going to break through the cycle of reincarnation. Sovereign Peerless revealed a helpless expression when he reached this point. The Sovereign breaking through the cycle of reincarnation was a good thing for them, but it could also be a bad thing. Once the Sovereign broke through, he might be able to leave the Saints' world. From then on, these autarchs would be free. No one would be able to restrain them. But if the Sovereign failed to break through the cycle of reincarnation and died, there would be nothing better. The Sovereign would cease to exist in the future. But if he didn't die and returned to the Saints' world, their lives would be even more miserable. Especially you. Whether or not the sovereign breaks through the cycle of reincarnation, he won't let you go. His ambitions are far too great. Becoming a sovereign isn't his ultimate goal. Becoming the controller of primal chaos is. Sovereign Peerless looked at Murongyu with a grim expression. The reason why I haven't taken over your body is because I don't want to be targeted by autarchs. Moreover, if you succeed in killing the sovereign and becoming the controller of primal chaos, I won't be lacking in benefits. Thump. Murongyu staggered, almost falling off his chair. Wasn't Sovereign Peerless a little too direct? He was completely speechless, but at least she'd made it clear that she wouldn't stab Murongyu in the back. That was much better than Sovereign Jinwu and the others. At the very least, Murongyu wouldn't have to worry about Sovereign Peerless stabbing him in the back. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.